Okay, welcome to the February 23rd regular meeting of the Littleton City Planning Commission. For those of you who are following this at home, I understand we may have a few video format problems that show you a different agenda than what we're following tonight. Trust us, we'll get to where we need to be, and hopefully in good time. Dennis, can you call the roll? Oh.
I'm here tonight. Commissioner Stavropoulos.
Present.
Chair Metcalf.
Present.
Commissioner Arturia.
Here.
Commissioner Bockenstead.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Newfinke.
Here.
Commissioner Samuelson.
Here.
Good. The first item on the agenda is minutes and agenda. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes of the January 12th meeting?
I've got a few corrections to make.
Can we get a motion first?
I move that we accept the minutes.
Second. Okay, comments, Steve?
Okay. First of all, Suzanne's last name is spelled incorrectly on the first page. And on the back page there, on line 43, on Dave's vote, it's got the motion carried 7-0. I believe it was 6-1 with Kevin Kostoff saying no.
Any other corrections or comments?
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected? Okay. Accepted 7-0. Okay, general business. We had two resolutions adopted thanking Kent Bagley for his years chairing the Planning Commission and Kevin Kostoff for his years of service. Dennis, we have those here for signature someplace to? Okay. So presumably as long as we sign those before the end of the evening? Okay. Or we can be efficient and sign them as we're talking. Okay, unscheduled public appearances. Anyone here tonight wishing to address the Planning Commission? Hearing none, we'll move on. Public hearings. Tonight we have a public hearing for an application for a plan development overlay for the Prince Street Senior Residences at Prince Street and Westbury Avenue. I think the first item would be the staff presentation.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Jan Dickinson, Principal Planner on this case, and I will be making the staff presentation tonight. First of all, I would like to enter the following exhibits into the record. The City Staff Report and Attachments, that's Exhibit A. Exhibit B, the application and attachments. Exhibit C, the area reference map. Exhibit D, the City Comp Plan, Central Area Neighborhood by reference. Exhibit E, the Littleton Downtown Design Standards and Guidelines for Subareas 2 and 3 by reference. Exhibit F, the City Zoning Ordinance by reference. Exhibit G, the Official Zoning Maps by reference. Exhibit H, the Proof of Posting. Exhibit I, the Proof of Publication. Exhibit J, the Public Hearing Roster. And Exhibit K is an addendum staff report with today's date that I place at each one of your places up there, and also have with this attachment.
So if anybody needs to see these throughout the course of the presentation, they're right here.
Well, I guess, do we not have overhead?
we missing our overhead? Here we go. Getting there.
Okay. Bring that. Go. Okay. Okay. The property that's the subject of tonight's hearing is about a 25,080 square foot parcel of land in this area here, with Westbury Avenue butting the north side of the property, South Prince Street the west side, and South Sycamore Street the east side. It's actually 4 subdivision lots under the same ownership. There's actually three single family rental houses and a duplex rental on the property, and then I do believe this lot here off of Sycamore is vacant. The property is zoned CA, Central Area Mixed Use District. That proposal is that zoning is to remain unchanged. The application tonight has been filed by Wazi Partners LLC. They are requesting approval of a PD overlay to redevelop these 3 properties for a senior independent living facility accommodating 50 residential dwelling units. The properties adjacent are all zone CA. And north of the property is the Littleton City Center and Geneva Village, which is multifamily residential for seniors. On the east side is office buildings and then residential. And to the south is the Arapahoe Mental Health Adolescent Day Resource Center, school, and single-family residential. And to the west is office and single-family residential. And then further to the east on Berry is multifamily as well. I thought I would, to try to maybe clarify a few things, to explain to the Planning Commission and then the public what's really going on tonight for, approving a plan development overlay plan versus an actual rezoning of property. The use, which is the senior independent living facility, is a permitted use in the CA district. And the PDO is required for this project because since the council had adopted the transit impact overlay zone around the light rail station, which this property falls under, that ordinance requires properties within that zone to file a PD overlay if they're going to do a project such as this one, which is demolish structures and build a new structure that's not single family and that exceeds 500 square feet. The applicant is not proposing to rezone the property. The property is zoned for this use. I just wanted to reiterate that it is presently allowed. The Planning Commission must follow criteria that's stated in Section 10.9.5 of the City Code in determining the approval of PDO, and I attached that as an attachment to your package for your reference. I'll just reiterate that. The criteria as follows. 1 is the proposed use is compatible with existing and proposed uses of adjacent properties. And 2, the access and increased traffic in adjacent residential neighborhoods generated by the use shall not have a significant detrimental impact on the neighborhood. And 3, architectural design of proposed features including, but not limited to, building height, setbacks, facades, fenestration, retaining walls, and fences shall complement and be compatible with adjacent structures, especially those structures designated or proposed for designation as having notable character or qualities of architectural and/or historical significance. If an application is for a site located within a historic district on the list of merit or designated as a historic landmark, the Planning Commission shall not make any finding regarding architectural design, but may forward any comments about the design to the Historical Preservation Board. And 4 is the site complies with the city's outdoor lighting code. And I'll just point out that the requirements regarding the historic district and all that regarding the Historic Preservation Board does not apply to this property, as it didn't fall under any of those categories. The staff did evaluate the criteria in looking at this project, and I did, and that has been formulated in the conclusion and recommendation. The staff felt that the proposed use is compatible with the existing and proposed uses of the adjacent properties, in that the surrounding neighborhood is Zone CA, which allows for a mix of commercial, retail, and higher density residential uses. We felt that access and increased traffic in adjacent residential neighborhoods that is generated by the use will not have a significant detrimental impact on the neighborhood, in that the majority of the neighborhood is commercial, government offices, and multiple family residential, with only a few older single-family residential units remaining. The traffic impacts generated by this development should not be any more significant than what would be anticipated in a commercial downtown area. This proposal may provide increased pedestrian activity in the area and support the economic viability of downtown commercial uses by providing additional neighborhood residents and activity. And the third criteria, while the proposed development is a significant change to the existing property, it is a use allowed in the CA district and is compatible with the majority of the adjacent uses and buildings. The building form and architecture is in compliance with Littleton Downtown Design Standards and Guidelines for subareas 2 and 3, which consider the existing character and vision of the neighborhood. And 4, all new exterior lighting fixtures will comply with the requirements of Chapter 15 of the City Zoning Code. I'm going to leave the actual presentation of the project to the applicant. I do want to cover a few little things here. There was at least a couple planning commissioners that I heard from today that found some conflict with the age restriction issue, and that is the zoning code actually defines an elderly person as being 60 years of age or older, and the parking regulations in the zoning code refer to elderly housing, self-care, limited care units, and then it describes buffet units and one-bedroom apartments and all. And then the new definition we have for senior independent facility restricts the age as 55 and over. And the applicant's actual proposal is an age restriction for 62 and over. And it's probably my fault, because when I was reviewing the PD overlay plan, I thought for consistency they should probably use the same definition for independent living facility as we have in the city code. But because, and I honestly, I have to admit, I didn't go back and look at that definition for elderly person. So I talked with the applicant, and since their proposal actually is for 62 and over, they are agreeable to changing that on the PD overlay and specifying that as the age restriction for this property is 62 and over, if that would alleviate some of your concerns. So the addendum that I passed out was some correctional things that needed to be done on the PD overlay plan. If you all should approve it, staff would recommend that these corrections be made prior to recording. Our process was a little confusing because we allow people to process site plans at the same time they process a plan development overlay. The site plans have a little bit different information on them than the PD overlay, and I know I totally confused the architect when I was redlining plans and telling him what he should put on and what not. So and then I got the plans in to get out to packets, and of course that confusion had occurred. I wanted to get these packets out to you, so I thought I would handle it by just preparing this addendum tonight to explain these little corrections that we recommended be changed on the PD overlay if you all approve it. So that's what that is. And I included a new motion for you that would include this as a condition of approval. And if you want to change that age restriction to 62 and over, you can add that in as a condition as well, and that we just add that with that. The other thing I'd like to announce to you is that Dick Farley from Civitas is here tonight. He's the gentleman that worked with the Planning Commission and the Historic Preservation Board to develop the downtown design guidelines, and he reviewed this proposal in relation to those guidelines, and he came tonight so that he could answer any questions you might have relating to some of that. So with that, staff's recommending approval of the project, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff from the commission?
Should we wait for the presentation from, is the applicant going to make a presentation as well?
Right after me.
I'd prefer if we get both presentations and then maybe we can ask questions of whichever will be directed. That way we'll have a more complete picture.
Good. Maybe we'll get some of the questions answered during the presentation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
My name is Chris Downs. I'm with Wazee Partners. I'm a principal. Tyler Downs to my right, also a principal with Wazee Partners. We have with us this evening Chad Holzinger of Oz Architecture, the architect. And we also have Ben Waldman with LSC, the transportation consultant. Okay. Chad, why don't you set up some of these Chad will be doing a little presentation later. I know that you all have your own packets, but if anyone or I should make reference to these during the presentation, if you can have them up. And let's hand out, we have a written submission as well. This will be on the overhead as well, but you won't have to turn around.
We have a monitor down.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we have a cheat screen up here.
Got it.
But thank you.
Why did we do this development? We did this development because we think that this location in Old Town Littleton is what we call an amenity-rich environment for senior housing. It's a walkabout neighborhood. You can walk out to the gallery. You can walk to restaurants. You can walk to a neighborhood bank within 2 blocks. You can walk to your dry cleaning. You can walk to a costume store. So for us, that's what attracted us to this property. There's also something that the city of Littleton has done, and that's in the form of the Buck Recreation Center. You all, I don't have to tell you what's there, but for someone who's even lived in this area, to go into the Buck Center for the first time and see, again, the amenities that are being provided and the programs being provided for seniors. Therapy pools, aquasizer classes, silver sneakers, exercise groups. There are probably 18 events every month for seniors that are coordinated through the rec center for site visits and field trips, and you can place your project on the agenda and go to those events. There are classes. There's luncheons. There's a health clinic in the center. It's just it's probably one of the major features that we would use in marketing this property. This is an independent or we call them senior apartments. I don't want to confuse them with our nomenclature. It's under your standard, a senior apartment. We will have no licenses. We will have no nursing functions. We're looking for a younger, more vibrant crowd. I don't think I can work that. Yes, I can work it. It's on. Thank you, Chad. If you enter the building from Berry Street, the main entrance will provide a very large foyer right in the middle. And this is the main entrance into the common area activities. And that's what most seniors are looking for. They're not looking for isolation. They're looking for places of interaction. And as you walk in the front foyer, we have a large area that can be also adapted to an evening function. We can put tables in there if we have a special dinner function. And you will look as you walk in through the foyer, you will look into an exterior courtyard just to the south where the planking is shown. Immediate to the west, and I guess that direction to the left, is the community room. It's about 1,200 square feet. It will have a event kitchen. We will do cooking classes. There will be an opportunity for the residents to to reserve this room, to have family functions there. to have family dinner, and then we will have community functions there as well. Immediately to the north of the community room is a fireplace and TV lounge area. It'll be all enclosed with bookcases, card tables for afternoon card games, and other functions. Just off the corner of the courtyard is the library, which has a separate computer demonstration lab, and that's for use by the residences. Further adjacent to that area is our management office. We will have an on-site full-time manager that'll address the needs of the residents. Then we will also have a part-time activities director. And the activities director will schedule the transportation, work on doctor visits, things like that, and coordinate such things as getting the bus over to the Buck Center. We've done some preliminary market demand analysis. We see in our market area, which is basically mostly Littleton, runs on the west side, C470, south side, C470, north side, Bellevue, east side, Broadway. And that was our primary market area. We have in that area a senior population which would potentially be interested in this property of about 13,890 seniors. The projection for 2010 is approximately 18,000 seniors. We think that this senior apartment project complies and, in a sense, undertakes some directives in your own comprehensive plan that the city adopted. We have, under your city comprehensive plan, community-wide policy for land use, policy 11, which says the city shall pursue an active program to secure new development and redevelopment of commercial and multifamily land uses within the central area to achieve this activity center concept. And we're in the central area, and that's what we think we're doing by bringing this development to you this evening. We also wanted to direct your attention to policy number 8, which is a specific policy for the sub-neighborhood 3, which is what we are inside the CA zone. And that policy number 8 says that new commercial and multifamily residential development be especially encouraged within the following area. You can ignore A and C because we are B on that one, and that's all the area from the rear of the structures on the north side of Main Street to Berry Avenue, except R5 districts. We're not in the R5, we're in the CA. So I think what we've said here is, if we take a quick review of the comprehensive plan, that this project, in a sense, speaks to the encouragement of your own comprehensive plan to have multifamily development in this area. In terms of other facilities that might, in a sense, be market competition with us, I don't know how much you would care, but just the complementary other senior properties that are in the area, there are 2. There's Geneva Village immediately to the north, which has 28 units. And then there's the Libby Bortz, just south of Main Street. And you're all familiar with that. It is a different kind of property. Libby Bortz is assisted living. It's got a big care program. It's for frail elderly. It has a full 3-meal program. That's not what we're doing. We're a younger crowd, more independent, people who drive their own car, and that's our market group. The existing uses, you people drive by them every day that you come in here. You know what's on the property. These are older structures. They've probably lived out their foreseeable life is come to its own, some kind of horizon there. They're still usable, but at this point we're saying that we think this project, in a sense, takes a little bit of the blight out of that corner of Littleton. In terms of architectural highlights, I'm going to let Chad Holzinger address some of the processes we went through to achieve the elevations and the general layout of the property, but we just highlighted a few of them for you, such as the fact that we're going to bring in the Sternberger historic lights. We're going to fix a radius in the curb on Berry Street in accordance with the engineer's recommendations. We're going to be burying the overhead power lines. We're going to be providing extensive landscaping, as the site plan will demonstrate. We will be bringing build green initiatives to the project. And I think our architect can demonstrate how he approached the need to create a gateway impression that the property has. I think that concludes my comments. I think we've got the breakout of the units. We have 50 units total. We have 50 parking spaces, elevator served underground parking, 18 bedrooms, and 32 one bedrooms. And each of these units will be a full kitchen, full apartment, just what you would expect. It has a large walk-in, walk-through closet that gets you into the bath facility area. We've set up also an office in each unit where we'll have the plug-in computers, and it's got built-in shelving so that people can do a little bit of organization for the units. That concludes my presentation. Chad, would you like to?
Good evening. Chad Holzinger with Oz Architecture. I think I'd like to start with the site plan. As Jan and Chris had alluded to, we spent a considerable amount of time studying the site plan and the design guidelines. Sorry. I'll get this right one time. Because it's a terrific site in Littleton, at the corner of Prince Street and Berry, and we think that we would like to propose a building that honors its place in the city. So, as Jan said, we're across from the city center, South Prince. We think we're at a gateway corner. The design guidelines suggest that as well. Visitors to the city will pass this site, as well as visitors to the historic downtown district. And so our architectural proposal pays attention to this corner as an important element to the city of Littleton. We've also suggested a slight curve to the facade that makes an overture to the park to respond to its proximity to this great amenity to the town. And then we've also, on this corner, as you'll see in the building elevations, worked to create a framing device that, in the form of a cornice element that frames Geneva Lodge from the south viewing north on the street. As Chris mentioned, and Jan, all of our parking on the site is covered. There are 4 spaces at the grade level that access essentially a back door by the leasing office and into the lobby. The balance of the parking is beneath grade. 46 cars, which will be primarily resident assigned parking spaces. Again, upside down. Excuse me. The elevations from the corner of at Prince and Berry is a tower element clad in masonry with a cornice feature. The proposed masonry is suggestive of what's cladding this building, a reddish brown masonry, and then it would be flanked by two masonry masses that would be an orangish color brick, which we think is evocative of some of the retail and businesses at historic downtown. We've also proposed a mass of terracotta colored cementitious material that would also relate in color and slightly in form to this building and make that curved overture to the park. And we've introduced balconies to the extent feasible so that we get not only some architectural relief and interest, but also call out that this is a residential project. Between the masses, we have a deep recess, which is the entrance to the building, and a covered entrance, a covered canopy, which would serve for the tenants. Chris just pulled up our material sample board, so you can get an idea of some of the colors and textures that we're contemplating with the orangish brick and the brownish brick and some of the paint accent colors. I'm going to put this up the right way for the first time. The design guidelines, as Jan said, we're in two districts, sub-area 2 and 3, the northeast area, as well as the Prince Street sub-area. So a pretty unusual challenge architecturally, and also we're across the street from the Civic Center sub-area, which I think is 6, or maybe it's 1. But an interesting and fun challenge to design a building that tries to knit together these different design areas on a single site. And so the strategy was to do something civic on the Prince Street corner with the taller colonnade module and masonry, and then step down in material and mass as we step into sub-area 2. And then actually turn the corner with white shiplap siding, which the design guidelines suggest, and we feel is appropriate given the nature of the Sycamore residences and existing buildings, as well as the Geneva Lodge. At key corners, we've added a cornice element that we think will be a dynamic landmark element. The major one being at the corner of Prince and Berry, but we've also done subsequent smaller ones at the other corners of the building to really celebrate the ends of the buildings and also framing the views of the proximate buildings and neighborhood. This is the canopy I was describing that would frame Geneva from the Geneva Lodge from the south looking north. We've also worked very hard to make sure that this is a 3-story building, not a 4-story building. We feel that's important because it's a very tight urban site, and struggling with the sidewalk, tree lawn, building relationships. To go to that 4th story, we think would be a real imposition on the street. And so we worked very diligently to keep the scale of the building at 3 stories, and that involved not only putting the parking underground, but making sure that all of our unit layouts and amenities were as efficient as possible so that we could maximize the content of the building without sacrificing to achieve that. Last, I think we worked very hard to ensure that our south elevation, which faces the south property, was a designed elevation, that it wasn't a left behind side with simple fenestration and balconies. Instead, we tried to bring some of the character of the front and the sides of the building around the back to really make a building with no back side. So I think with that concludes my comments. I don't know.
I think if you have nothing else to present, we can go right to questions. Okay. Questions from the commission?
I had a question just related to the materials up there, since we just covered that. You referred to cementatious material. Are you talking about stucco, or are you talking about hardy board siding on the curved facade? I'm unclear.
It would be a hardy board type product, right?
And then the shiplap siding, which could also be hardy board, but you seem to have made a distinction. Is that not going to be hardy type?
It would be also. I think all of the siding materials would be. The distinction is in some of the detailing. I think the shiplap siding, the gray and white, would be detailed as we presented it on the board.
Okay.
The terracotta would have a reveal between the panels.
Okay, but it's not a stucco facade. I just wasn't sure.
Facade,
okay,
that's correct.
Very good.
Okay, open for other questions. Anybody? Want to go down the line?
I would like to hear more about the age group for the record. I mean, it seems like it's perceived, but I want to hear it for the record, if you don't mind.
Julio, I think maybe I can elaborate on that. I'd called Jan. I was one of the ones that called. And then as I continued researching, I found on the internet the federal government in the 1988 amendments to the Fair Housing Act tells us that to market themselves as senior housing, private pay housing owners must follow guidelines. Number one is all tenants in the development must be age 62 or older, which I think they addressed. That's what they chose. Or number two option was that at least 80% of the units are occupied by at least one person who is aged 55 or older. And so if they market themselves as senior housing, which the PDO does have senior residences on it, perhaps that takes care of it. But that's, again, 1988 Fair Housing Act, I believe.
Yes, you read our mind.
I became curious about that because we had age-restricted housing, active adult communities, retirement communities. We had several terms that appeared in the material we got, and I thought that was something that was important to pin down. You guys came in and said 62 and above, and that is exactly what the requirements are.
They are indeed. One of the things that we have found with the senior properties is that you have to create the expectation that the person next door is not going to be, is going to be of a common community sense. There may be a place for mixed-use housing, but in the senior housing, there's an expectation that people won't be up at night late at night, that people will be keeping different hours. There won't be loud music. There will be a sense of security. There will be a sense of community. Separately, under the fair housing laws, if we call this a senior apartment and market it as a senior apartment, and we use the 55-year-old number, we expose ourselves to litigation by plaintiffs for improperly excluding them if they are less than 62. If you set the benchmark at 62 or better, then you have the protection of the Fair Housing Act that we can exclude under 62.
And that's what you're planning to do?
Yes. By deed restriction, probably. That's the only way we can get the fair housing protection.
David, I had a question about parking. You have 46 spaces underground, then 4 additional?
Yep.
And you feel that's adequate parking for 50 units?
Yes, our understanding of the code in the city of Littleton is that there's a formula that basically works out so that for senior housing, the ratio is 1-to-1. And so we've met the code, and I believe we've submitted some additional traffic studies, but if you want to ask our transportation consultant about why he believes that that's compliant as well, we can bring Ben down.
Sure, I'd like a little more information on that.
Hi, for the record, I'm Ben Waldman with LSC Transportation. We office at 1889 York Street in Denver. And we did do a small analysis on this, looking at their parking requirements. We looked at the industry standard publication on this, which is the ITE Parking Generation Manual. And in your packet, you'll see a short memo from me explaining our why we determined that 1 unit per space was sufficient for this. And on the back of that same page is a copy from the ITE Parking Generation Manual, which shows for senior adult housing that generally 0.5 spaces per unit is acceptable, and the applicant is allowing for 1 space per unit, which we feel is more than adequate.
I have a couple of questions for you. One of the comments that was made earlier is that you are looking to attract a younger, more vibrant community, and very specifically stated people who drive their own car. Is that true of the 2 communities in that study that you said, that you indicate here? Is the demographic similar enough? Are those 2, 46 and 91 dwellings that you used in Huntington Beach also attracting the kind of young, vibrant crowd that would drive their own vehicle?
I can't speak to the specifics of those studies because they don't give that kind of demographic data in the studies, but they were for similar facilities such as this.
Okay. The other question that I have is, this is listed in the staff narrative under traffic and parking requirements. They're indicating that you provided information saying that there would be 174 vehicle trips per an average weekday. Could you give us an idea how you came to that number?
Yes. Again, we used another publication by ITE, Institute for Transportation Engineers, which is Trip Generation Handbook. Okay. And in that there is a land use for senior adult housing, which has recommended rates based on similar studies such as this Parking Generation Handbook. And we use those rates, which again are industry standard.
Okay. And the last question that I've got, and that may not be for you, but it is related to parking. In the addendum that we were given from Jan, there is the request that the number of dwelling units allowed by PDO will be changed from 50 to 57. Is that, do you also plan to offer 57 parking spaces? Yeah.
They have a comparison table on their first sheet. And without having it right in front of me, what I recall it has on there, it has a column of what is allowed in just the CA district, and that would be whatever the number of units were just allowed in the straight CA district.
So you're proposing...
Well, and then the second column is what the CA district allows under PDO allowance. So that's giving you what the CA district under PDO allowance allows a maximum of 100 units per acre. So that would equate to 57 units on this side if they were asking for that. But they are asking for the third column on that, which is the 50 units.
So what, under zoning comparison, then just to be specific, you're proposing that we simply correct in the allowed required, not modify what is proposed or requested?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they just made a typo of putting 50 there instead of 57, so I just... Okay.
Thank you.
I'll wait for other people to ask questions.
Okay.
I'd like to verify on the west side of the building along Prince Street, is there no plans for a little patios or porches on the first level?
On Prince Street, that is correct. We had toyed around with that on and off, but in the end we removed them because of proximity to the sidewalk, and also this area right here is an exercise center for the building and didn't require a patio.
Anything else, Steve?
That's it.
Anybody else before I...
I have a bunch of questions, but I'll let some other people jump in as well.
Sounds like it's down to you and
Okay.
until I weigh in.
This is an issue. I think I'll first probably address that to staff because we had some similar discussions when the Spectrum facility came up concerning handicap parking. The current zoning code specifies for residential units that there should be as many handicap parking places as there are units designated specifically to be handicap accessible. So maybe I guess the first thing for the applicant, do you know how many units you intend to designate as being handicap accessible?
Yes, I believe we're designating 2 units as handicap accessible. But we're providing 4 cars as handicap accessible cars.
Okay. And so 2 of the handicap accessible spots are going to be in the covered, in the basement, and 2 are in that 4 area on the guest area.
That's correct. And those would also be available to residents if the demand were there.
Okay, but the 4 that you have at grade level, you don't plan to designate those to residents? Those are kind of for visitors and general public? Is that?
I believe so. I think I'll defer that to these guys.
We're prepared to give 1 space, parking space per unit. That's why I have 50 parking spaces. We find that as the property fills up, cars over time are sold. People no longer find a dependence on them. Therefore, we anticipate having a little flexibility with those spaces up under the building in terms of we would fill those last. Most people want to be in the heated garage with elevator access. Those spaces up there, those 4 are what we call flex spaces. They're available for designation, but we just historically will find that they'll be free to be flex spaces.
Do you feel then that there is no need for any additional visitor parking or for loading parking? You mentioned that you offer, you'll be offering transportation services. I would imagine you would have some kind of a van or a vehicle. Where do you plan to be parking that when you're loading and unloading?
We do not have in our budget the purchase of a van.
Okay.
We will have the coordination of van services to the property. And in particular, we have the omnibus service, which we intend to make use of and make donations to. Most of these van services are on call and can be called or regularly scheduled. Once we're full, if we have the need for regular schedules for the Tuesday or Thursday shopping trip, they'll be scheduled. Chad, we have a pickup station in front of the building?
That's correct.
Yeah, if you could show that, that was a little unclear to me in a couple of places as to where you plan to do loading, whether it's your own vehicle or your own van or somebody else's.
What we proposed is a loading-only zone in the public right-of-way in lieu of parallel stalls at the front door, such that vans, relatives, or other service providers could make use of that without impairing traffic in the neighborhood.
Okay. And I guess related to that, you mentioned that actually the Buck Center is one of the things that attracted you to that area. Have you had, I don't recall any comments from South Suburban Parks and Recreation District. I don't know if you've had any communication with them as to the impact that you may have, or if they have any thoughts about a facility that will be using Buck as one of its marketing tools.
I wish I could name the executive director. I had about a 40-minute conversation with him describing the project. She was very excited and thought this would be a great project. And she said, you know, we are on a fee schedule, so there's about a $42 per month. But, you know, she lauded her senior amenities and the senior programs and said this would be a great fit, and we'd love to have this addition to the community. And I haven't talked with her since. She did mention that if she got good communication about it, she would attend the Planning and Zoning Commission and speak in favor of the project, but didn't happen.
Okay. Well, I use the Buck on a regular basis, even though I may not fit the exact demographic. I live 2 blocks away from it, so it is a great facility. So, thank you. And I have a question for, this would be a staff question. On city engineering, there is this line right above the staff comment that says, supportive of request to waive on-site detention. Could someone explain that a little bit more? Because I did not find really any other reference of what that means.
Well, I got a heads up today about that question, so I had to forward that to somebody that knows more about this than me, and that would be the city engineer. And so he provided me with a written response, which I'll be happy to read to you. And he also gave me a couple copies of the pages of the Littleton Storm Drainage Criteria Manual that covers that. And I'll read that section. This is it.
Maybe you can, if you have extra copies, if there's a way that you can make them available for on channel.
What if I read it to you? I'll read it to you, and then I'll run and make some copies for you.
Well, I was just thinking if we
I don't
could
know if I can
have
read
it
it off of here or
demonstrated
not.
on.
Probably not going to be able to read it.
Yeah.
Why don't you just go ahead and
Yeah.
read it,
Read
Jan?
it from there,
Yeah.
I can tell you. Okay. Well, the question was, what do city ordinances say and where regarding on-site detention for this parcel project, and why is the waiver justified, and how will the stormwater from the site be handled. The response from the city engineer is the city storm drainage criteria manuals adopted by the city council allows for waivers of storm runoff detention based on certain conditions. It's referenced in section 3.6, which I'll read to you after this. This small site falls within that special consideration. We are not presently aware of any surface drainage or flooding problems in this downtown area. At this time, we have suggested the developer consider paying the city a fee in lieu of providing on-site detention of storm runoff. On-site private underground detention is always a possibility for these small infill sites, but not very practical in most cases. We hope to prepare a downtown master drainage plan soon. We may consider the construction of a regional pond on the north side of Berry Avenue on city-owned property that would serve the entire downtown redevelopment area north of Main Street and east of Prince Street. There is presently a storm sewer under Prince Street that drains north into Slaughterhouse Gulch, which could serve as the outlet system for such a regional detention pond. The collection of a storm detention fee from all of the properties in this basin would fund a regional facility. The fee would likely be based on a cost per acre of impervious surface of the redeveloped areas. And the section from the storm drainage criteria manual, well, 3.3.6 deals with storm runoff detention, but the section here regarding waivers says the city may consider exemptions from detention requirements under the following conditions. Exemptions from the detention requirement may be granted for infill areas and for additions to existing buildings and paved areas. Exemptions may be granted when the increased impervious area of the infill or the increased impervious area of the building and paved area additions is less than 10,000 square feet. City will also consider any and all previous increases in impervious area when determining whether to grant an exemption. B, an exemption from on-site detention requirements may be granted where regional detention facilities are sized with a capacity to accommodate flows from a fully developed basin. And then there was a second question. I don't know if you want me to go ahead with this, Chair Metcalf.
No, go ahead.
You
We're
had a
talking about
question.
it. The subject's come up, so let's explore it fully.
You had a question also this morning regarding the percentage of impermeable surface on the parcel now. What will be with this project, proposed project? And the city engineer's answer was these technical factors will be determined and evaluated during the site development plan process, and a final decision regarding on-site storm detention system or fee in lieu of construction will be made then. And I would sort of explain the process to you a little bit. When we reviewed the PD overlay, the conceptual site plan was reviewed as part of that. There are some of these technicalities that need to be dealt with at the final level, and that would be some final engineering. And that would, if you approve this PD overlay, that would be the next step in their process, was to go through the final site development plan approval, which would include final drainage studies and the evaluation that the city engineer has discussed here.
Can I weigh in on your question here, Pavlos? I think I heard, as you were describing 3.3.6, that one of the conditions for the waiver was if the impervious square footage on the site was not going to be increased by more than 10,000 square feet. In this case, by my calculation, it looks like it is.
Yeah.
So therefore, what has to happen with that kind of increase in impervious surface?
Or I guess more specifically, the question would be under which, if the 10,000 square foot increase, that's the criteria that is not met, a regional detention pond is not yet in place, under which criteria?
Well, my best guess is that the city engineering is considering the second one, because there's a lot of infill sites in downtown Littleton that it's, for redeveloping those sites, to have individual on-site detention for everyone is very difficult. I mean, in this case, they could do it by doing it underground, but that's pretty expensive. And so that's their plan, is hopefully to develop this master plan to create this regional facility so that these sites in downtown Littleton can redevelop, because to require, yes, sir.
Just as an added, no, I'm going to help you out. It's just it's the same thing that I was going to say. I think it's very important that you get to a certain point where you have so many smaller sites. You can't just have all these small little detention facilities. And so what the city engineer is moving toward is a regional facility, takes in a greater area so that the problem will go away. He's obviously has that figured out. There's not a danger, otherwise he would not be favorable at this point in time on this discussion. So it's under review. It's something that's going to be, the city's going to have to deal with sooner or later.
Well, this is just this site. I mean, the
Well,
St.
that's what
Mary's
this one-
site,
exactly.
the site originally
There's
when
a
they
bunch
came
of
in
others,
last
so
year.
I'm not too worried
so there's
about
a lot of them, actually.
that issue.
No, I think that a regional detention pond, in many respects, makes a lot of sense. My question then is, my understanding is that redevelopment fees, any fees that are associated with redevelopment tend to be incurred at the time of the redevelopment, at the time of the application. If a detention pond is planned and is developed, say, a year or 2 years from now, this facility will not be contributing to it because it won't be paying a redevelopment fee at that time, right?
Actually, he was requiring it before. Yeah, actually, I think they were coming at, the engineer, that your engineer actually came up with some costs, that they looked at that would cost them to build a detention facility for their property alone.
Okay.
And he came up, I believe, with an estimate of about $15,000. Isn't that correct? Something around there. So that's the fee that the city engineer is looking at, and that would be paid by the applicant with this building.
We have comparable
Yeah.
precedent with the Sternberg lights, for example. They're not being installed initially, but we take a fee in lieu, and when they are installed collectively, when they do an entire street.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that it does contribute, because you already have a development in place. The next development, we don't know what will happen if we're moving ahead with the detention.
Our engineers recommended that fee be paid at the time the site development plan's recorded and the permits are issued, I believe.
So the implication is there's no immediate risk of flooding in that area without any on-site detention or regional detention.
I think his opinion on that.
But the implication for the developer is that there is a fee attached, and that is understood by the developer for a future regional detention to take care of the contribution from this site.
It appears that they're nodding their head.
Right. Head nods are always good.
Acknowledge the head
That's
nod,
even better. Thank you.
Okay.
Carlos, anything else?
Simply a couple of comments on the plan development overlay and the official application form. Those may want to be corrected. The pre-application meeting date is listed as the 10th of August of 2009. I imagine that meant 2008. Normally you request 2 sets of civil construction plans, or that's not check marked. That's in the application form. You see what I'm talking about, Jen?
Yeah, since they're processing a site development plan with it, the civil construction drawings, will be submitted at the final site development plan stage.
Yeah, no further questions from me.
Linda? Nothing? Anybody else?
I have an interest, I guess, perhaps, in hearing briefly, maybe Mr. Farley is the one for that, about the nature of the negotiations relating to the facade and the sub-area requirements and so on, maybe kind of where it started and how we ended up here, and perhaps what the city proposed that the developer didn't find affordable or credible or something along that line. I'd be interested to know a little bit about the process, and I'll stipulate this is, I haven't been on the Planning Commission yet a year, so I'm a newbie, and I'm kind of interested in how the city functions when it comes to this. Perhaps Jen or someone from the city can fill us in, or the developer can. I don't really care which side it comes from, but maybe just a couple minutes on how that negotiation, you spoke to the difficulty because it abuts a couple different sub areas, and there was one comment from a citizen, I believe, saying they would have preferred shiplap siding all the way around, which I guess I like this proposal better, but I'd like to hear a little bit about how you came to this.
I'll start. They, of course, were informed of the design guidelines that they needed to adhere to at our pre-submittal meeting, and they made their submittal. And actually, prior to our first Development Review Committee meeting, I had organized a meeting with them and Mr. Farley to review the design palette, and I'm going to probably defer to Dick to kind of speak more to that. But my recollection is that he was fairly pleased with their initial submittal, and he had made some suggestions on the corner element for Prince and Berry and a few other items that they were very agreeable to doing. And by the time it actually got to the Development Review Committee meeting for their review, there was just maybe a small couple of things to be adjusted at the Development Review Committee meeting. So I would like to defer it to Dick. Dick developed the guidelines, and he had his recommendations as far as how to deal with the fact that this property is actually located in two sub areas, which makes it a little unique. So we had to kind of make some interpretation there. So if I could throw it to Dick,
Well, you guys changed places there. I'm curious, the picture...
Much more versed in design than me, so that's why I'm
Sure. And I've been in hearings where he spoke before, so I thought he'd probably very credible here. While you guys changed places, I was going to say, the picture on the sign from the previous development is quite a bit different, and of course has another story. I think reducing to 3 stories to me is a good idea, but I also wondered, I guess, was it the same architect dealing with that? So we had a new set.
No, it was a whole different process, and,
okay.
And my recollection was, I think there was more of a battle going on between them and that design review, if I recall. So, and I did ask the property owner to take that sign down twice now because I thought it was confusing, but they're not doing it. So
I was just curious. Yeah.
So, Jan, essentially, this started from scratch. Really didn't trade off of anything on the previous.
No, what the applicant did do is they did come in and they reviewed that case file from the previous one, and I thought they did a fairly good job of looking at what issues came out during that review, and addressed it up front with their current application. So.
I'm Dick Farley with Civitas, 1200 Bannock Street in Denver. I think this is an interesting site because it's kind of the crossroads of 3 sub areas as they were defined in the design guidelines. There's the residential sub area 2, then there's the Prince Street sub area 3, and then there's sub area 1, which is the city offices, the residential in the park, and so there's some characteristics of all 3 of them that kind of blended together. The attempt, I think, in the guidelines is to say that you need to respect the city hall and the park, and that's largely brick and largely formal. And then you need to sort of respect the residential area to the south, which is, largely right now shiplap, cladding, sloped roofs, smaller scale. The whole idea of the design guidelines is to try to recall these things because the zoning is such that virtually everything that's in downtown Littleton is going to probably change over time. The smaller scale residential is probably, zoned on at CA or R5, so the densities are all going to change over time. Potentially some of it will stay, I don't know, but the idea of the guidelines is to recognize this change and at the same time try to recall that character. So this site combines a lot of these things. It has a more masonry, both in material and color, frontage towards the City Hall and for Prince Street, and then it has a more lighter cladding, more detailing that relates to the neighborhood to the south. When the architect brought their work in, I thought that they had already gotten a lot of the general ideas down. We worked a fair amount on trying to get more brick at the corner of Prince and Berry, try to get more emphasis there because it really is a substantial element as you come into downtown Littleton from the north. So we worked some of the detailing. There was a little bit more formality that I suggested in the way that the windows and balconies were aligned facing Berry. But by and large, it was already in pretty good shape when they brought it in.
I probably could have figured this out, but it's difficult to assess the extent or the degree of the curve in that section east of the main entry, I think it is. Mm-hmm. In general, the center of it is depressed or concave by about how far? A couple feet, maybe?
I don't even know if it's that much.
Okay.
It's a very subtle curve, and I think it respects the idea of bringing the building up to the street and framing that space, but at the same time, I think when you get flat light, either morning flat light or evening flat light across that curve, I think you'll see some variation there that should be quite nice. Rather than just simply the flat facade, I think you'll get some highlights to it.
Basically, it's an attempt to develop some appearance of depth without really doing serious setbacks as at the entrance. It's a visual thing, not really a serious setback.
Right, right. Well, I think the building has a lot of variety to it, which I think is very good. It has a corner piece. It has the entry, which defines it specially. It's sort of set back and has a big canopy that comes out. And then the slight curve for the rest of the facade defines that piece. Then it turns a corner and goes down into the neighborhood. So, I think there's a lot of, it holds together, I think, and yet there's a lot of variety to it.
I appreciate your commentary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Have I held back long enough?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. I've got a couple. Jan, they've described the LSC study referring to industry standards. I guess I'm a little uncomfortable the fact that the study projects were in Huntington Beach, California. We have no idea what the age or activity level of the occupants is. Also, the study was done in 1989. What does the city code say about calculating expected traffic or projected traffic?
Well, the city code, what it says is for developments, rezonings, PD overlays, whatever, a full traffic analysis isn't required with that application if the generated traffic is less than 250 average trips a day. And their traffic engineer, actually I'm kind of talking about the trips now, I guess, instead of the parking, but the city code doesn't have vehicular trips per use. our traffic engineers always relied on the ITE manual, which is their standard Bible, basically. And he evaluates and reviews the proposals and makes his comment, usually relating to design analysis as far as traffic signals or lanes or various, things that address safety with their proposal and their impacts. So so if you're asking a question that does the city code actually address vehicle trips generated by this type of use? No, it doesn't. We defer to the ITE.
Okay, same thing with, so parking and the projected trips the same way. It goes per the ITE, even though it's relatively old studies.
Well, I'd have to defer to their traffic engineer who's here tonight as far as that parking study goes. What we do when we have in this case, our code actually did address parking as a 1-to-1 ratio on an elderly housing project. So in that light, they did comply with the city code. When we have uses that come into the door that aren't actually in the parking regulations, because you can't do them all, there's a section in that code that requires, actually says that the zoning official will determine based on information or whatever that is provided. And we get some of those sometimes, like the ice ranch I have down in South Park. We don't have any of those around here. We were trying to figure out what kind of parking. So what we required the applicant to do is provide examples of other parking. The city staff also will poll other jurisdictions to see what their experiences have been, and actually I did in this case, because DRC had expressed some concerns too, even though the 1-to-1 met our city code. And so I have the information in my file, but I did poll Denver. There was a few projects in Denver. There was a couple in Boulder. Then there was one in Inglewood.
Billings?
Billings, Montana, that this developer actually owns those buildings. And I did find out from all them that those projects were either parked at 1-to-1 or less, and that they didn't have any problems with it. So
okay, I don't know that I'm really picking nits at the parking ratio that we ended up with. It just seems that we're kind of dependent on some rather old studies and the applicant's presentations.
And that's why I did some checking around I spent considerable time checking around elsewhere, and some of the projects that I got information on actually were lots newer than 1989. Some were older. The ones in Billings are actually older retrofits, but the other ones that I received information on were newer projects. So.
Mr. Downs, forgive me, I'm not really trying to pick on your project, but we're in the process of trying to update the comprehensive plan, trying to learn as much as we can about parking ratios, traffic studies, traffic projections. I'm just trying to see where we really are as far as the city standards and what we can learn from this as we go to develop the updated comprehensive plan.
There's something we don't have our traffic engineer available at this moment, but it may be that the reference, the 1989 reference may be some industry standard, and I just can't elaborate on it. But on the parking side, with the senior population, we're more than comfortable 1-to-1, and quite frankly, our marketing studies indicate if we're not 1-to-1, we're below what maybe the market wants. So,
appreciate the comment.
Just as a clarification, for this hearing's purpose, we won't be using the comprehensive plan to evaluate the conditions, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Jan, I know I had sent you a question about the proposed density being predicated on the amount of unobstructed open space and looking for calculations. Since then, I've gone through and done my own calculations, so I'm reasonably satisfied we're close to the 20% we need in order to get the higher density. I guess that concerns me. What concerns me is a little bit is this in combination with the storm drainage, storm runoff. There's not a lot of impermeable surface, so I think that was an area that was worth pursuing. My only other question, and this is really petty and minor, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I know we've got 3 different kinds of trees, street trees on there. There's not a lot of distance between the building and the curb. Is the arborist satisfied that the size of those trees, the mature size, is going to be?
A couple of weeks ago, he looked at the plan and gave it back to me, said everything's fine. And so then when I got your email today, I took it back to him with the ruler, and I went over it with him again, and he's fine with it. Actually, the distances that they're proposing is actually greater than what you see on downtown Main Street between the trees and the buildings. He didn't really want them to use columnar trees. He doesn't like those, and they are using a little bushier tree because he'd like to see some shade tree there, but he felt that it would be fine. There might be a couple areas where eventually some of the sides of the trees might have to be trimmed up a little bit, but he felt comfortable with the root size, so.
Well, certainly the shade master honey locust is a normal street tree, so that doesn't surprise me. I'm not particularly familiar with that kind of ash, and I've never planted a swamp oak before, so I have no idea how big they're going to be. It just concerned me a little bit that we're looking at 10 to 16 feet curb to building. That's not a lot of room for a tree that's going to be 20 or 30 foot in diameter. So if the arborist is happy with it, I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we can open the public hearing to additional comments. Dennis, did anybody sign up? Oh, there we go. Thank you. It was buried in there. Okay, Kim Glidden is signed up to speak. We'd like you to come up and introduce yourself, name, location, and tell us whether you favor or oppose the project. And try and keep your comments to about 4 minutes.
No problem.
There's such a big crowd here.
Yeah. My name is Kim Glidden. I reside at 7345 Houston Waring Circle, Littleton. I'm a business owner in downtown Littleton on Curtis Street, and the project looks great. My concern has to do more with the age restriction. I think having this type of facility, being 62 and plus, in the downtown area is not going to be helpful to most of the merchants as far as retail, perhaps in services. I'm concerned about if it's a rental and people move in, husband, wife move in, maybe husband can do more than the wife can do, husband dies, wife's there. What happens then? Are they allowed to bring in a live-in person to help them? And then ultimately, this doesn't do anything economically, in my opinion, to help the area, as far as people out walking and using and going to restaurants. I would have to agree with some of the comments that Greg Rinke said at the merchant meeting, and I would just like to say also that there's a number of people that are not members of the merchant group and that do not attend the meeting even if they are members. So a lot of times when these developers go down and make a presentation to the merchant group, it's really not hitting most of the people down there that do business. So I would like more of an outreach, and I look at the central area study, which you're in the process of doing, as a vehicle that you're really going to hear a lot more about what people feel. And I'm the only person here, and I venture to say there's a number of other merchants that while this looks nice, what it's really going to do for downtown isn't going to help much economically for us. It will look nice as people drive in off Santa Fe onto Prince into downtown. I do think there's a number of places. There's Geneva Village, there's Libby Boards. I know those are more service-related. River Point, I think, is similar to this type of a project. You've got Windcrest, and I don't see very many people coming from either of those facilities to downtown to shop. And those were basically my comments. So I don't know if there's a way to look at that further or not. I would hate to see, I mean, if this one comes in, then I'd hate to see more developers coming in with more of these projects in this area. And that's my concern, because we've had 3 projects that were supposed to be available to all ages that would have been very helpful to downtown. And so Littleton Crossing's the first one that's not going to happen. It's my understanding the one at McDonald's isn't really on.
Nothing's happening at this
forward.
point, as far as we know.
And Nevada Place is struggling. It's the economy and so forth.
They're actually getting their building permits at this point, though, which is good, so.
And
just the
Nevada
last
Place
two-
is going well. And it's my impression, too, that a number of those residents are this age group. They're people that are downsizing. And I guess I would question, too, what the rents are. I mean, what's the rent difference between this and going down to the place that's being built further down on by Bellevue? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, one of the questions that she asked was about what happens if a spouse dies, the survivor needs medical assistance or live-in medical care. Is that something that's contemplated in the project proposal?
Our lease will require that you be capable of independent living. If you are not capable, there are some a la carte services that you can contract for. You can contract for, not with us, but with an independent agency or an independent provider. You can contract for housekeeping. In theory, you could contract for some kind of in-house living. You can, under the Fair Housing Act, and probably we would contemplate it, you can bring in someone under 62 to be a live-in aid in this type of housing to render services, and you have not violated the housing restriction. It's not common. What is more common is that people make the next move to an assisted living facility. But you could have a live-in aid.
Okay. Chris, actually, before you sit down, could you also address some of Kim's economic concerns? I know those are not necessarily part of the requirement, but I do think there are some legitimate concerns that the community has in terms of bringing in a facility that will be utilizing public services like the omnibus, like the Buck Center, like others. What do you expect that your tenants will be contributing to the economy? And
they will be using neighborhood services. They'll be using a dry cleaner. They'll be using the local CoBiz bank. They will be using the restaurants. If not them, but perhaps their children come to visit them, and there are outings in the retail area. It seems to us, and that's why we're attracted to this site, that given the restaurant activity on Main Street and down around the corner at Toast's, and then over further to the south towards the community college, that you've got many restaurant venues at many price points that we see people, we see children coming, adult children coming here and taking mom and dad out for breakfast at Terracotta. That's just a classic that will occur, and we would anticipate that. We see the people going to the local dentists up the street, for instance, the Johnson Clinic. We see them walking northward towards the other shopping center that's right on the corner. We don't anticipate that our residents will be going beyond the barrier of Santa Fe Boulevard. We see that kind of as a natural barrier. They will be using the Buck Recreation Center. I can't tell you, we haven't really done a lot of consumptions. I don't know what their consumption levels are.
I don't think that's really service above and beyond the call of the application anyway, Chris. So thanks for taking a stab at it. Any other questions? Tyler Downs? Oh, right. Sorry, you had signed up to speak. Thought you might want to offer some rare personal insight, but that's okay. No other speakers? Okay, any other questions, comments from the commissioners? You started to either ask a question or make a motion? Okay. Okay, no more comments. So do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Norm second?
Norm seconded.
Who made the motion? Who made the motion? And who made the motion? Sorry.
I thought I
Linda
made the
did?
motion.
Norm made the motion.
Oh, Norm made the motion and Linda seconded?
Yes, seconded.
Okay, thank you.
They were all up there momentarily.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I hear a motion from the commission? I think Jan provided an amended version.
I'd like to make a motion. Planning Commission Resolution Number 0901 for Prince Street Senior Residences Plan Development Overlay is approved with the condition that the corrections described in the addendum staff report, referred to as Exhibit K, shall be included in the PDO prior to recordization. Can't say it.
Second from somebody?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Bockenstadt.
This is the time that we can offer additional amendments.
This is the time we can discuss, argue, counter, or offer amendments, yes.
I'm a little concerned about the use of the term independent living facility because it is a term that we have tried to define in the past as having a different meaning than how it's used right now. So I'm wondering whether it would be appropriate to call it a senior living facility. I don't know if somebody has a definition. If you remember, and some time ago, we had tried to, after Spectrum had come with a proposal, we had tried to come up with some definitions of what's an independent living facility, what's an assisted living facility. And I don't know if those definitions have ever been approved by council, been made part of the code, but they were, okay. And does that definition that we have approved in the city match what they're describing here?
Well, they're describing it, I think, for purposes of the Fair Housing Act, and the definition in code is 55 or older. That was adopted by council about 2 months ago.
Yeah, so I think for clarity's sake, I would prefer that we don't use the same term to mean two different things. And since it's referred to as an independent living facility as use in the zoning comparison, the PDO under the proposed, I suggest that maybe a senior living facility or some other term that would be acceptable to the client and consistent with our own terminology be used.
Can we just remove the independent living facility from this document and just include an age, 62 and older?
I have a question for the attorney before we go any farther, and that is there a problem with it, with any of the current wording as it stands, as presented, et cetera?
There's no legal issue with it.
Thank you.
I mean, the city's only requirement is 55 or over, right, Jan? There's no other definition as to what might constitute independent living?
There is a definition
There's
of
a
independent.
there's a definition, and it says the definition that the city council adopted, which was based on standard language. It was provided by, I think it was the American Retired People or whatever I got. It restricted, it said at least 55 years of age and older. The other thing that definition had in it that this project isn't providing is a central dining facility where you can actually get meals there in addition to making one in your apartment. Their facility is having this kitchen they explained, which is just a cater kitchen or a demonstration kitchen. So they would not be having the central dining facility that our definition has in it. And they are actually going beyond the 55 years and doing the 62 and over for their purposes, for their Fair Housing Act requirements. So
That's the reason why I would prefer if, and again, I'm not making that as a proposal yet because I don't know, A, if that's acceptable to the applicant and if it's legally okay, but if under use is listed as a senior living facility, I know that's a term that I've heard them use, and then in the asterisk is specified senior living facility, multifamily residential rental properties restricted to adults at least 62 years of age or older, and then keeping the same paragraph. So if that's something that would be legally okay and that is acceptable to the applicant, then I'd like to propose it if the applicant has a better suggestion.
No, but at least that
Well, he's trying to get some legal.
I mean, I guess my issue with it is that you're taking a defined term and now turning it into a not defined term by code. If you want to change it, at least maybe consider changing it to elderly so that we have a definition of 60 in the code and it refers back to the parking requirements. I guess I'm just not sure why you want to change it to senior.
I want to not use the term independent living facility, and I'm open to any other suggestions.
Why don't you want to use that term? Because
the definition of the term as it is in the city code does not match the facility that they'd like to build.
But no definition is city code is going to match the facility they want to build.
Yeah, well, what we're really talking about here is redefining or coming up with a new definition within city code. Is that what we're saying, Suzanne?
Well, I mean, there is no definition.
But we do define, what, senior assisted living facility?
We define an assisted living facility.
And elderly housing.
And we define elderly housing.
And elderly housing is the one that's probably most closely related because of the parking requirement.
Elderly is 60 and over.
And
Yeah.
independent, right.
But we didn't do senior.
We did independent.
Yeah. I understand the intent of trying to get clarity here, especially for future reference, but do we want to make it a specific amendment, Pavlos?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see, because the term independent living facility has a specific meaning in the code, and it does not match what they've got, coming up with something that is more general, that can include theirs, so that nobody can come back and say, wait a minute, this is a PDO that's been approved for an independent living facility, so you must be providing.
You know, I don't agree with your logic.
Let's let him finish if that is a motion, let's let him finish the motion and get a second.
So I think if we have it as use, I mean, if elderly housing is a better term, I'm not really sure what would be the most appropriate. But independent living facility is not the definition that, in my opinion, matches.
So the motion is?
Normally, I don't know.
We have a motion.
Huh?
Do we have a motion?
I was asking a question, I'd like a suggestion for maybe a better name. If senior living facility is not.
We're now leaning towards independent because, and this would be more restrictive than our definition. Independent actually has a definition that has been adopted by City Council, and this would be independent and a more restrictive interpretation of independent, which I think would be more acceptable probably. So it's our basis, and they've actually taken it one step further. So, but it can tie back to our independent living.
Really, isn't this just being considered under the section of the city ordinance that addresses elderly housing? That's it. That's the only thing that has any effect on density, anything else as part of the PDO application, correct?
Right.
So it needs no other definition. There's no other definition that really applies.
You can use independent, and it has a separate definition, but independent doesn't yet really have a place in the code because it was adopted for the purpose of then discussing park fees and those kinds of things.
But in terms of evaluating the application, the PDO, according to the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance, the only thing that's really applicable is elderly housing, correct?
Right.
Okay, so if they want to market it as senior independent living or seniors for the active lifestyle, I mean, that's a marketing terminology. It has nothing to do with comprehensive plan, zoning code, or anything else.
Well, the reason why I wanted them to specifically put something like this on the PDO is so that if they go away and some apartment developer comes along and wants to do just regular apartments on there, the parking doesn't work.
Would it be acceptable then if we change use to elderly housing and then the asterisk be elderly housing, multifamily residential rental properties restricted to adults at least 62 years of age or older? Would that be acceptable? So I therefore move that as an amendment that we change the proposed use from independent living facility to elderly housing, and that the corresponding asterisk is changed to read elderly housing, multifamily residential rental properties restricted to adults at least 62 years of age or older, and that the second sentence remains as it currently is.
Okay, Dennis, did you catch all that?
Doreen did. Doreen did. We have it on tape. Oh, she didn't quite.
Just,
You'll have it on tape. It's on Granicus.
just as a comment, in the zoning regulations, elderly housing is 60 and above.
Right.
Yeah, and I think on the PDO you can become more restrictive on that. So.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion? Okay, I want to ask a clarification. Exactly where does that language get inserted?
In sheet 1 of the PDO, in the zoning comparison table, column 4, that says proposed, row 2nd, where it currently reads independent living facility, that will get changed to elderly housing. And then the asterisk below the table is where the narrative asterisk elderly housing, multifamily residential rental properties restricted to adults at least 62 years of age or older.
Thank you.
And then the remainder of the second sentence will remain as is.
Okay, discussion from anybody? Because I wanted to ask two questions. Suzanne, legally, do you see a problem with that? Changing the language on the cover sheet for the PDO? As far as definitions, code, that sort of thing?
I mean, I don't see a problem with it legally now. I guess I'm just, I mean, the Fair Housing Act could change and they could lower the age to 55, and now we got 62 in our PDO. And I mean, when you try to make your code comply to a law you can't control, I guess I'm just wondering why we want to conform to the fair, some requirement out there that.
I think I understand the applicant's motivation.
Right, but I'm just not sure why we're there's not legally a problem with it, I guess, to answer the question.
Right.
Call for the question.
Okay, I think first I was going to give Chris an opportunity. Do you want to say anything about this issue?
Just in support, that we would support the motion.
You would support the motion?
Yes.
Okay, question's been called. Any other discussion, or we can just, okay, we can vote. Cool. So the motion has been to amend the motion for acceptance of the PDO. So we're just voting on the motion to amend. Motion fails 4-3. Okay, further discussion on the motion to approve the PDO application as amended by the staff amendment?
Call for the question.
No other comments?
So
If the question's
clarify
been called.
again? Well, we have to have discussion on the question once it's called.
That's what I'm saying.
And so
We're discussing the question, the motion to accept the PDO.
okay. And let me just say something really quickly. I was looking in the zoning ordinance, section 10-9-5, and it says that the proposed development must demonstrate special attention to creative, high-quality design. And I was a little bit concerned about the design of this property and what the criteria that we have to use to evaluate is the proposed use is compatible with existing and proposed uses of adjacent properties. And I'm a little bit concerned about the transition between that building and the rest of the neighborhood. And I also think some of the architectural design and proposed features, including but not limited to building height, setbacks, facades, fenestration, retaining walls and fences, shall complement and be compatible with adjacent structures, especially those structures designated or proposed for designation as having notable character qualities of architectural significance. Anyways, my point is that, you look to the west, you see two, Victorian-style homes, and then all of a sudden right across the street will be this new structure. And also to the northwest, too, you have a number of mixed design elements that exist out there. So, I kind of question some of these points here that have been made. And also to compatibility with the design standards that exist. I know some of them are kind of subjective, but I just wanted to bring up some of that.
Follow-up comments? With or counter?
I was, from my questions, you probably realized I was also interested in the evolution of the design and relating down to Main Street. It probably, when Jose Trujillo was designing and building the facade for Jose's, I suspected he had some, generated some controversy perhaps. We also got into a discussion of lot size as far as the historic nature. Now, I know these aren't on the list of merit or anything. Almost more than the design of the building, and one of the greatest appreciations is that it's 3 stories now rather than 4. I think I actually like the aspect of the facade from the previous design, but my wife and I are kind of stuck in a Victorian era as far as all sorts of details, interior and exterior, so I'm careful not to try to export that to anyone else. You've got those residential lots, you're combining 3 of them, and that will never be unwound, no matter what the building is that's there. So I guess that was a consideration I had. I think I guess to me the design is acceptable, and it's a tough call, as we've used the term in harmony, trying to decide what matches in a historic district. On the other side of Sycamore Street, and then the new development further north on Prince, probably, you have to consider if that was in harmony. But I guess the overriding concern or the overriding factor to me is removing that 4th story probably enhances this development to the neighborhood more than most other aspects of it.
Yeah, I'm actually very much in agreement with Norm there. I'm not a fan of this building here, but I'm a fan of getting rid of the fourth floor. And so I'm not going to have any problem with this one because I didn't like the fourth floor.
Other comments?
Yeah.
Douglas?
I know that lies outside the domain of what the requirements are to you, but I would very strongly encourage you, since my understanding is you plan to be the owners and operators, not just the developers, to continue and develop as strong a relationship as you can with the retail merchants, with the downtown economy. That will be bringing in 50-plus people into the area. That's a significant addition to it, and making sure that the downtown area, the public services upon which your tenants will rely, remain vibrant as your clientele would be, I think would be the benefit of Littleton as well as to you. So I would just encourage an ongoing cooperation with all the merchants, with the city, with the downtown merchants, to find areas of mutual interest and how this can be a very positive addition to the area, and I think that would make you a better citizen in the end. Again, that's just a request, since I don't know when the next time I may have the opportunity to say so. Thank you.
Call for the question.
Question's been called. Any dissent? Other comments? Okay. The motion on the floor is to accept the PDO as per the, with corrections in the addendum staff report. All those in favor say aye. Vote aye, sorry. Too many study sessions.
Samuelson's really Canoe Pinky.
Really?
Okay.
Oh.
6-1. So the PDO is accepted. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And good luck.
And thanks for following the downtown design guidelines for the sub-areas and being able to make that all work together. It's quite the challenge.
Am I correct in understanding that Samuelson and Newfinke's names are reversed up there? Is that that's correct?
What's
Okay,
going on?
they're correct down here.
Oh.
But just for the record, that's what they were saying.
Oh,
it was Linda,
Linda the
voting no,
Okay,
and
thank
Kurt
you.
was voting yes.
Okay.
And I don't think it made any difference in previous votes, but
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, we ended up having to shift them.
Just
last
for the
week.
record.
they knew what it was.
Right. Yep. No, we wouldn't have it, sure.
Okay, next item on the agenda is long-range planning. That's going to be the comp plan update in the study session immediately following this meeting.
Correct.
So that takes us to reports, starting with staff reports.
Nothing at this point.
Okay.
Other than the fact that we do have another meeting tonight for True Grit for the Historic Preservation Board. If you have not had a chance to go, we were very fortunate. We had 5 of you there last time, and really appreciate everybody who was able to make that. And I think everybody found it very interesting. A lot of overlap, I think, with what we're doing with the Central Area Plan. So I think that the discussion is very valuable for us. If you can make it this Thursday night again, it would be really, really helpful. So thank you again, and hopefully you can make it this time too.
Great. Liaison reports, BIAC.
If you pass those down. The BIAC met last Friday, February 20th. During that meeting, the BIAC began editing a report on the economic opportunities associated with aging to the City Council. In a draft report, there may be some recommendations that will be addressed to the Planning Commission by the BIAC. And several of those recommendations may include the Planning Commission Central Area Plan can determine the ideal blend of compatible business and high-quality livable residential area, which can attract customers to view downtown as a walkable destination. Another recommendation could be that the Planning Commission should recommend policies that allow increased density adjacent to the light rail, and these policies should be communicated to the development community. The Planning Commission should explore universal or visitability standards, and these are housing standards that allow wheelchair and walker access, and should consider requiring a small percentage of in any new housing development to be built by these standards. And then city policies should encourage development of patio-type homes, townhomes, and condos with one-floor living. The Planning Commission also should develop and articulate a vision for balanced housing to guide future development in the city, particularly in the downtown area. And then the city should also partner with realtors to conduct a survey why people, especially younger families, are not buying homes in Littleton. And the Planning Commission should study reducing or eliminating permit fees as an incentive for the renovation of older single-family homes inhabited by their owners. Again, these are potential recommendations, and they may not necessarily be the ones that are actually submitted to us. So I thought we'd get that out in front of everybody, and we can consider that during the comp plan process. So that's all I have.
First feedback on our outreach effort.
Yep.
Historic Preservation Board?
Historic Preservation, they've been working on the True Grit. They had the first forum the other night. They were very excited about the attendance of the Planning Commission there. At the last meeting, they heard a certificate of appropriateness for the front patio of the melting pot, which this was they had extended it 3 different times, and they came up with a whole new plan, a whole new setup this time, and it was a real nice proposal which got approved. So they're going to have 17 outdoor tables in the front of the melting pot. They had a lot of encouragement to the owners of the melting pot to put some soft lights onto the front of the building, so that the front of the building will be more lit up than the existing blue row lights that are on there now. And they've got the other meeting, the second of the True Grit meetings will be Thursday.
Great. Individual commissioners' comments. Start with you, Norm.
Just one item. I'm always bringing you newspaper articles from the Rocky Mountain News, Saturday, February 21st, 2009, while the Rocky is still with us. The headline is Downtown Real Estate Engine Sputtering. Fortunately, it's downtown Denver, not downtown Littleton. The subhead says Overbuilding and Economy Slow Sales, Increase Vacancy. As we know, there's quite a bit that's been approved to be built in downtown Littleton. One that we just discussed was approved once before. We have a new proposal. So with any luck at all, we're not approving downtown Littleton to be overbuilt and for the economy to sputter here.
Kurt?
No comments.
Julio?
No.
Steve?
No.
Linda? Pavlos? Okay. The chair has no comments, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn, and we'll go into our study session.
So move.
Second.
Norm moved. I'll let Pavlos second this time.
Great, thanks. We're going to do 2 things tonight. I wanted to talk about the schedule for outreach,
The second thing is I want to talk about the community survey. I've got First thing I want to do is introduce Bob Tonsing. Bob is our consultant on the survey. Bob has a company that's based here in Littleton called Public Information Corporation. Some of you may know Bob. Bob served on City Council for Littleton for 9 years and was the representative from Littleton for 12 years to RTD Board, and was very instrumental in doing such things as making sure that the RTD first line went through Littleton, and that the railroad lines through Littleton were depressed. Very active, both in City Council as well as RTD, and also very involved in C-470 as it went through the city. So has a long history with the city, lives in Littleton, and does a lot of work for other jurisdictions doing surveys similar to what we're doing here. Actually did previous surveys for Littleton, such as the senior services survey that was done several years ago, and has done other surveys for us as well. Does a lot of work in Boulder County. So very familiar with comprehensive planning and what we do and what needs to be said. Has been a real help for us so far. First thing I want to talk about is the schedule that Bob and I put together today. Have a chance to look at this. First meeting is tonight, February 23rd. By next meeting, which is March 9th, our next study session, we hope to have the survey completed at that point. And by March 9th, have our final copy ready to go. March 16th to 20 would actually then start printing the survey and have mail preparation on the 23rd to the 25th of March. And the 26th to 27th would actually mail it as an insert for the Littleton Report. So it would be going out in the Littleton Report. We could also do distribution at the same time by the same folks that distribute the Littleton Report to the library and other facilities throughout the city. We would then look at surveys arriving at the houses and businesses in the city Tuesday and Wednesday, March 31st and April 1st. And we would then set a deadline for return of surveys on Friday, April 17th. With the thought that would give people several weeks. We don't want to extend it too long because they just forget about it at that point. It's just too easy to forget those things. So we want some kind of deadline, ask for response to be fairly quick. And Bob would be doing his analysis as things were returned before that. By April 27th, we'd have a study session then where we'd have the raw numbers available so we could get some sense of what's coming back and what the analysis of that would look like. And by May 11th, we would then have an open house that we've been scheduling, and Doreen has been looking at different facilities that would work for that, and has some good ideas for us in terms of what facilities we might have for May 11th for that open house. That pretty much sets on schedule with what we talked about at our last study session. Gets us into the Littleton Report, which I think is critical, and it really takes advantage of that with that wide distribution, plus the front page article that we'll get that will really encourage people to respond to that. And Bob has a pretty good sense in terms of what kind of response we can anticipate and how we design to do that. Bob and I have been working along with Kelly Nardi and with Chris Hargeth on a proposal that we have for you tonight. And I'm going to bring Bob down here in a second. What we're handing out is the draft survey that we put together based on the questions that we've gotten from you. Bob took the questions that we got from members of the Planning Commission, the ones you emailed to us. We really appreciate those. They were very helpful and very well thought out, and has consolidated those. You may not recognize your individual question, but I think you'll recognize the intent of what you were asking and the concept. And Bob can speak for himself, but he was very impressed with the thought that went into those and the work that went into those. What we'd like you to do is read through those tonight and ask initial questions, and then get responses back to us by next Monday. So we'd like you to tell us any additional fatal flaws that you see or fatal omissions that we have. At this point, I think we're at fatal, given the schedule. So something you see is aptly fatal in terms of omission or a flaw, something we've done incorrectly, and get those back to us by next Monday, first thing. So over the weekend would be great. And that's going to be, unfortunately, have to be an absolute deadline. So it's got to be back by next Monday morning, first thing. I'll then get those to Bob, work with him, and we can turn that around in time to get that final done by the 9th. Bob, you want to lead through here?
I think there's enough copies. Would you guys like a second copy to mark up and hand back in?
We can also
I kept two myself, so.
send your electronic copy as well.
Okay. I always like to have one to scribble on.
This actually is about this, I guess you'd say, the second draft.
Yeah.
We got thrown into it with a very, very short fuse, and there's certainly time to touch it up. There isn't an awful lot of time to add questions. This particular format, inserted in the Littleton report, I think will get pretty much a maximum return. In our experience, if you go more than one page with a mail survey, or actually one sheet with two sides, the responses tend to fall off somewhat. I guess it would be physically possible, but we talked a good deal about that in the several meetings that we did have, and came up with this. We have a few more open-ended questions than perhaps had been anticipated, but I firmly believe that open-ended questions are an extremely useful tool, especially since if you're going to have a multiple choice, you may not get everything in there that people possibly could want to respond to. So we have a mixture of both kinds of questions. I think there's no point in my reading them to you, but why don't we just step back and you can kind of go down through, and then if you have questions, we'll do our best.
Pablo, you look like you have a question already.
Yeah, one thing that we had discussed quite a bit was having the ability to tell something about the respondent in terms of who they are. Are they a resident? Are they a business owner? Are they a property owner? Are they a visitor? And that's one of the first things that is pretty glaring to me, because we decided that to the degree to which there's going to be a certain degree of subjectivity, having an idea about the respondent. If we find out that the majority of downtown business owners feel a certain way, and the majority of people who neither work nor live, nor do they own property in the downtown area feel very differently, then we can figure out how to weigh the two.
Why don't you handle the downtown people?
Yeah, we're doing two things. I think we could add more information here. We could add another question in terms of, are you? We have that a little bit in terms of, I come down to work, I come downtown to shop. So that's handled to some degree in terms of who people are. We also thought we'd continue on. Bob is seeing the survey as multifaceted, that we would also look at doing those what I would call the interviews. I think Bob would not call them interviews, perhaps, where we would take them out to individuals, so we have that information and can get more information from them. And that if I'm understanding Bob correctly, that's an opportunity for getting more open-ended responses from particular key people in the downtown itself. So because that's such a key focus for us, that the property owners, downtown merchants, that we might want more information from them than is down here. We'd use the same format, but allow them to expand on it a little bit more.
But I think Pablo's point is that if we're going to ask all these other things about the people responding to the survey, that in particular, sorry, Steve, that in particular would be something we'd want to find out up front.
Yeah,
so
and multiple,
not just working downtown, but property owner, business owner.
That
one-on-one, I think we were going to do the one-on-ones with the downtown merchants. Are you thinking, so you want to have,
I'm just, if we have a question here that basically allows somebody to check one or more boxes of, I'm a resident of Littleton, I own property in Littleton, I'm a business owner, some things like that that gives us some demographic characteristics in terms of when we were talking about the participants or the stakeholders. Well, what kind of a participant is this specific respondent? Because then it would be very good to be able to correlate and say 60% of people who check themselves as business owners also said there wasn't enough parking, but only 20% of people who check themselves as living downtown said there wasn't enough parking. I mean, that would be an interesting thing to be able to
So
check.
that's something we could probably work into one of these questions, right? Just another category.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about that, and we have the ability to add some questions on the back. That's something we don't, it kind of slows down the data processing, but it's entirely feasible.
Yeah, and that was more of a question of tell me a thing or two about who you are as opposed to what your opinion is, which is different than the survey itself.
And we do have some of that. We could certainly build on that, either add that into an existing question or add a separate question. Number 3, for example, has part of that, but we can certainly add more specifics for that too.
Right.
Sure.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, there's a difference between owning property, owning a business, and working downtown.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Question 15, I'm assuming, makes the assumption that people do live in the city of Littleton.
Well, I think it does because of, for the most part, the nature of the distribution that we're using. So it will go to businesses, so it might get business owners who do not live here but work here.
Could we add that, none
Not
of the
in
above?
Littleton? Sure, yeah,
Or
good
add
point.
in what part of Littleton do you live, and then
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't live in Littleton. Yeah.
do not.
And then having an option of I live outside of Littleton, because there may be people who have a postal address. Business owners, for example, will have, unless this goes only to residential addresses, business owners will have a postal address in Littleton.
It does go only to businesses and residents within the city of Littleton itself. So it's very careful to not go to just Littleton mailing addresses. It goes, but it will be also distributed at the library and other places. So people who get it at their business may not live in Littleton, so may want to know that. Or if they pick it up at the library, they may not either live or even work here. They may just come to the library.
I caution you, there are a lot of people who think they live in Littleton and they don't.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but I do know of
I'd say a
business
third
owners.
of the calls we get in our office are people who
They
think
won't be delivered to outside of the.
They won't be delivered outside, but they will be delivered to businesses for people who may work here but not live here.
Receive it.
No, but for example, David, the owner of Blueberries, which is over in Woodland Center, he owns a business, it's within the city limits.
But does not live here.
We would want his opinion, but he is not a resident of Littleton. So having a question that would be able to say, yes, I own a business in Littleton, and then down there to say, where in Littleton do you live? Another box that says, I live outside of Littleton.
Right. Good.
That again helps us determine.
Again, we'd say outside the city of Littleton. So.
Exactly, outside the city of Littleton.
So that's just giving us 2 more sets of differentiations.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's just,
You'll get some of those, all right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially by business owners, I think that we will get business owners who live outside of Littleton but who work here, and I think that's an important constituency to.
Is there any other major category or subject that we don't see addressed on here that was on somebody's list?
Yeah, about the boundaries, if what people feel the boundaries are.
We thought when we talked about that, we thought it'd be hard to actually do that in a survey, so we thought it might be more appropriate to do that at the open house, where we actually have the maps, have people respond to the maps we have in place. At that point, that it'd be awfully hard to calculate here. And plus, it might need some explanation that we might be able to provide at the open houses instead of on the survey. So,
Well, of course, that kind of thing will be done in great detail in a comp plan, but, Mr. Chairman, I think in the remarks you submitted, there was some information that just wouldn't work, you know?
I mean, it's a little complicated to put on a 1-page survey?
Yes. Yeah, it is, there are definite limitations when it comes time to start describing what streets with some precision would be the boundaries of downtown.
Bob and Kelly and Chris are always constantly reminding me that you've got to start with the assumption that people don't know what the comp plan is at all. You know, we've got people who really have no background in even, you know, the issues we're talking about. So we really have to, you know, kind of make sure we're hitting those people as well and being able to get the most information possible out of them. So.
At this point, as complicated as the study area map looks, it's about as simple as we're going to get it after. How long have we been wrestling with it? 9 months?
I don't think so. I'm lobbying for a simpler version.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of concern from Bob and from Kelly and Chris that they don't understand our impact areas, our northwest or east impact areas at all. They really are focusing on downtown, and the questions are really focusing on downtown and not the impact area. So.
And then I got, on this map, what we do have here, the study area. The top thing is, it looks like it's a blue or a purple line. In the, down at the bottom, it's calling it the downtown. That would actually be the central area.
Well, the way I've been thinking about it and the way we've been showing the map is that all of this is the central area. We were defining that as the downtown. Bob would agree with you completely that downtown in his mind is only Main Street and Alamo. It's
yes, that's
the conclusion we came to 2 meetings ago.
Is it too as well? Okay,
yeah, we had all agreed to.
Blue or
that's
purple,
my fault.
whatever that is central area, and the downtown is basically the red.
Okay. I apologize.
At least for purposes of starting the conversation, there are still some feelings about other areas that might should be or should not be part of the central area. But for the time being, to start the discussion.
Well,
good.
From day one, the term downtown Littleton was basically was what was talked about, and you know, in our meetings and in our drafting, and I think you could quickly get people confused if you started using, you know, central and downtown.
Well, I think one of the intentions, at least on some of the questions I saw, was that we address issues beyond just the downtown area. One of the things we've been talking about, well, tonight, is the evolution and the mix of structures and uses outside of the immediate downtown area.
Right.
So I guess that would be one of the things I think we ought to try and get into the questionnaire somewhere.
Given the mistake that I made on that, then most of these questions are going to read central area
Central
rather
area,
than downtown.
yeah, because if you say downtown,
right.
they think I'm going to live
it's
on
only
Main
2
and
blocks.
Alamo.
Right, right, exactly. So instead of downtown, we're going to be talking about central area. A question, I guess, that came up was, we're going to have to define that a little bit in the survey because people are going to think about downtown. I don't think most people have a clue. They've never heard of the central area, probably.
Well, let's think about this. Is it really? Most of the questions that we've raised up to now have been about the downtown.
Right.
Whether it's the mixed use, the density of residential, the kinds of businesses, historic preservation versus adaptation, that sort of thing. Most of it is downtown. The only thing is, what's missing is there's more to the central area than downtown. These questions, and I know most of my questions, Bob, were aimed at downtown, but there are concerns that we want people to address to us about issues within the central area, but not necessarily just in the downtown.
Right.
What's happening north of what we
because
normally
realistically,
call the
most of
downtown
the proposals, most of the applications we're going to get and need direction on are going to be the ones like we had tonight, which are not in downtown per se, that 2-block area, but are in the central area, the larger area. They're going to be outside of that. So if we want direction, we need to know scale, we need to know uses, need to know character. It's going to be in the central area, not in the downtown.
Right. So differentiation between central area overall and downtown, even if most of the questions end up being about downtown, we still need to make that differentiation, make it clear. But I think we need to come up with a couple of topics that we've been talking about for the last 6 to 9 months about central area as opposed to downtown and get them worked into the survey, at least to start the discussion.
Do any of these questions actually mention the Northwest Impact Area? The
No,
East
they
Impact
do not.
Area?
No,
So
the East.
We could take that off of this map for
That's
for this
what
purpose.
Bob is, and
I would
Kelly
agree.
and Chris have all
Central
been
area and
suggesting is that for purposes of the survey, it's pretty unnecessary.
I think that
and
I would agree.
confusing, yeah, to have it on there. So
Central area, possibly the downtown
right,
2-block area.
just those 2 areas, I think. That's it, yeah, or maybe
Would it be historic downtown? Would that be a better description for that?
In my mind, that would be better, yeah, than just downtown. But I think
Then
historic
everybody
town
knows
should-
what we're talking about.
Well, does the historic
It's a little broader.
Preservation, consider all of that
What's that?
historic?
A little broader
I
than
wouldn't,
that.
A little broader than historic downtown?
We could
Yeah.
fudge
It is
it
in
and
terms
call
of
it traditional
boundaries, I guess,
downtown.
yeah. I'm sorry?
We could call it traditional downtown.
Traditional downtown. Main Street Alamo. Yeah, if we'd said Main Street and Alamo, we'd have it, 'cause that's all we're doing.
Actually,
That may be.
that may be one way of doing it if we're really concerned, but I got to tell you, right.
Right.
Three months ago, Pavlos essentially came up with the definition of downtown. You tell somebody you're going to meet them downtown, they don't come wandering up here around the city building, and they don't walk down toward ACC. It's somewhere between Vega Park and the Melting Pot and someplace along Main Street or Alamo. That's it.
Bob did raise a question, too. Right now, we're really just talking Main Street and Alamo. He was wondering if it shouldn't go all the way down to Church. I think when he thinks about downtown, he's thinking about a larger area. But I guess the question is how far north do you go then, too? I don't know how people respond to that. You want to keep it Main Street and Alamo at this point for the...
It's a dashed line. That means it can stretch and move, and I think somewhere along the line we're going to find that it will.
I agree with you, Bob, but I didn't get very far either.
Well,
I
I
think
had
we should just,
suggested, downtown vicinity, perhaps.
Call it the downtown core.
The downtown what?
Core?
nobody's, I don't think people,
Yes, not CORPS.
I don't see anything wrong
Well,
with just
this-
keeping it downtown Littleton and don't even include the map and just leave it vague.
Well, I wondered about that, too, and I didn't get a good reaction to that one when I suggested that, too. So I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but the thought was you needed some sense of a map so people can relate to what we're talking about. But I thought that, too. And, Bob, you didn't react well to that. You thought we needed a map, I think. And Chris and Kelly really thought we need a map
Yeah.
for people to define what it is.
At least half the people aren't going to know.
This is the simplified version. Hope you understand that.
Do you think there's many people in Littleton that don't know where downtown Littleton is?
The ones who've lived here for 10 years and never been there, yeah. Like one of Kevin's friends last year. So, yeah, there will be people. I think at least as an orientation.
Yeah, I think it's important to give orientation of what we're talking about. And we're not talking about going all the way to Windermere, and we're not talking about going across Santa Fe.
Right.
So what I'm hearing right now is we're going to get rid of the two impact areas, the northwest and the east impact area off the map. We'll just have the central area, and we're going to have downtown and in parentheses Main Street / Alamo or something to that effect.
And drop the TIS as well. We don't need the TIS.
Yeah.
Yeah, and drop the TIS too. Good
I
point.
think
Yes,
that would be
exactly.
very
Yep.
confusing to people.
Yep. Yeah, the TIS is confusing as well. I don't think there's no reason to have that in
Yeah,
the
first
in the
they've got
survey.
to spend 20 minutes
Right.
figuring out what the TIS is.
That's right, exactly, right. And it's something I think we're going to want to deal with later in terms of what area really should we be talking about. This is so arbitrary at this point.
Right, and depending on what we get in the way of public comments, somebody had mentioned the idea of let's just assume that everything in this area is going to be impacted by transit, and we ought to start from that assumption. I don't know who that was. Do you remember, Julio?
So one thing is the second paragraph in the narrative of the top says many people think of downtown Littleton, and downtown Littleton is capitalized as Main Street. However, the Planning Commission's charge is to study the central area, which includes the area surrounding downtown. But there's a lot of questions. All the questions that I see that refer to a specific area tend to make reference to downtown and quite often capitalized, and no reference to central area. So I think, again, to just be clear with our terms, if we're going to use downtown Littleton as a capitalized, then let's specify what we do and use that in the map. If we're going to use downtown as a lowercase, that's fine because that's more generic. But I think it's confusing if people look at, on the map we've got Main Street, Alamo historic, then in the survey we've got downtown Littleton in caps, but we're studying the central area, except we're not asking anything about the central area.
Well, I think the idea is we need to ask about the central area as well. So let's just leave downtown as downtown, capitalized, downtown.
Then if we're going to capitalize it, then let's specify what we mean by downtown on the map.
Right.
Well,
If we're going to use terms in the survey, those terms should also exist on the map. Otherwise, it will be
And we're doing that if we put in downtown instead of historic Main Street Alamo, because inside the area that's identified as downtown are very prominently displayed Main and Alamo.
And I'm okay with either way. My thing is, let's simple terms and be consistent with their use.
As Dennis mentioned, I was sort of lobbying for church.
Well, we'll see how prescient we are 20 years from now, Bob, and whether it's really expanded that far or we've just infilled and made the most of what's closer to Main and Alamo.
Right.
But this is a starting point.
We were talking about demographics somewhat earlier. There was another one that I had considered, and that was, do you rent or own? That's very often an important demographic.
Rent, own, work at a business, own a business. I think a series of those questions, yes, that would be very important too.
And then, of course, since this is a household questionnaire, basically, you don't know exactly. We're not asking how many people are in the house. There's no point, I don't think. Go to your, census information, I suppose, but you don't know who's filling it out, so it might be useful to ask. We're almost into our second panel.
Well, we can be creative here, Bob. Eventually we can consolidate some of this back.
Well, and that's the other part. If you see any questions that you think should be deleted.
And we can clarify some of the language in the first 3 paragraphs and bring that down to like 1 paragraph.
But I think that if we use this panel over here to simply say, tell us a couple of things about yourself, sort of the demographics, and this becomes the survey, more of the, we can separate the questions that have to do with who are you from the questions that have to do with what's your opinion about some things.
Yeah, those would go here.
Yes.
But getting back to the I don't know. Like I say, this thing sort of descended upon me pretty quickly, and in our telephone surveys, we almost invariably go into age and gender of whoever it is that we talk to, and even though now this is not a representative sampling, and it never will be because it's self-selected, and there's no way to balance up the demographics based on a male survey.
But precisely because it's self-selecting, then we want to have a better idea of who it is that we get in respondents. So age might be good if we seem to be getting...
I had age of person who mostly filled out the questionnaire, because it's our experience on the telephone that very often it turns into a sort of a two people are right there on the telephone, and that's okay, but I think age and gender.
Would you ask for actual age or an age range?
Beg pardon?
Would you ask for the actual age?
Yes, we normally ask age range.
Age range.
We usually use the census breakouts, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, and so forth.
For those who question my dedication to alternative means of transportation, I will hastily add, hey, I think bicycling and pedestrians are important. Is a question like, does somebody feel that downtown Littleton is sufficiently friendly to bicyclists and to pedestrians? Is that going to get us very far? Is there something we could ask that's more pointed? What could we do to enhance that? I mean, can we get more information than just a yes or no, I feel it is or isn't?
I would...
No, go ahead.
Well, I would think that, honestly, the question 14, if you answered no, why? Personally, I'm more interested in knowing why somebody does not feel that downtown Littleton is friendly to bicyclists and or to pedestrians than whether somebody will live in the downtown area or not. Because whether someone will live in the downtown area or not, it's got to do with a whole bunch of... I'm not saying it's an irrelevant question, but given a choice, between which one. I want to know more about downtown as a destination.
And I guess that's what I'm asking. Do we want to ask either one of these questions as yes or no, or do we want to give them an opportunity to volunteer a little more information?
The other thing we talked about was maybe having one kind of open-ended question at the end. Was there anything else you'd like to tell us, any more explanation you'd like to provide? So something at the end where if they want to provide more information about any of these questions, we could get it. And I don't know if that would work for us or not, or we could go ahead and add it for those two questions together too. You know, if no to one of these questions, tell us why. You know, something like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We need to eliminate. I tend to think I would like to have the housing question in there, just because I think that's a critical one, given the type of development that we're getting and the kind of comments we've gotten too in terms of what we are missing in terms of types of housing people would like to see, and want to see how widespread that is.
But could we elaborate on that instead of making that two questions and taking up two whole spaces? Couldn't we say, would you consider living in downtown Littleton? Yes, no, why? Either way.
Yeah, I think the why is important.
And then do the same thing about the bicycle.
The bicyclist and the average citizen's not going to have an opinion one way or the other, whether it's bicycle-friendly in downtown.
Well, and we know we have problems with access and connectivity and a lot of those issues, so I don't know what more it's going to tell us.
I think that, for one thing, the why, I mean, I would be inclined to combine 13 and 14 and say, would you consider living in downtown Littleton someday? Yes, no, and then why? And because I want to know why they want to or why they don't want to. I think it's just as important to know the reasons for yes as it is the reasons for no. And then do you feel that downtown Littleton is sufficiently friendly to bicyclists and to pedestrians, and then having some kind of, that they can comment on that would be useful.
Same thing, you know, what could we do to improve it?
Yes,
What's the biggest
no, why?
Right.
You know, but the why, if we're going to ask an open-ended question, let's not restrict it to only if it's negative.
There's something we frequently do, which would boil that down to one question. In other words, if you say, I'm not 13 and 14, but instead of having, you know, separate lines for yes and no for the why, you could say
explain
what one reason occurred to you, you know, when you responded to question 13, and then we split it out later.
So the wording may be a little needing some wordsmithing, but basically we're saying let's not just ask yes or no, but a little more explanation.
I think a little bit more on those yes or no's is not terribly helpful. There's a couple of other things. On the top text, the last paragraph, we're talking about public meetings will be held to provide further focus.
Where are you right now?
The last paragraph of the narrative before we go to the questions. Presumably, by the time we send out the survey, we should have been planning the meeting. So hopefully we'll
have a date and
we'll
time
have specific
added to
dates, and if not location, then check the website or.
We hope to, we intend to have the location narrowed down at this point too. We're there only several locations we're looking at, so there aren't too many options.
Wouldn't that go though into the Littleton report?
It could go in the Littleton report. We could put it on here too.
We might as well, instead of telling them we will be holding public meetings, tell them we will be having an open house on May 11th at the Historical Museum or wherever it might be.
Public hearing and.
Yeah, we're looking at.
Kelly was planning to have a piece in the Littleton report referencing this.
Yeah.
So you could certainly, I mean, I'm speaking for her, which is
Yeah.
not right, but.
We could do it both or there, yeah, whichever. We'll ask Kelly what she thinks is most efficient too.
Or both. I mean,
or both, yeah.
What Pablo's is suggesting is this gives them an opportunity. It says, look, you're not just filling this out. There'll be a chance for follow-up.
That's exactly right.
And to the degree to which we already know when part of the follow-up will be, let's just put it in there. I don't think that we can mention too many times of when we will be having meetings.
While we're on that subject, just real quickly, we're looking at 3 locations primarily, and the Buck Center, which works well for us. We're looking at ACC, some of their facilities, and we're looking at Denver Seminary. They all have locations for us that would work well, have parking available. They're kind of very close to downtown. the museum really doesn't have enough space for us. We're assuming maybe 200 people. I mean, that's kind of where we're starting, kind of thinking about what could accommodate 200 people with a sound system, with parking. Those are the locations to be best. Town Hall probably doesn't work. Hudson Gardens probably doesn't work in terms of just being able to put stuff on the walls, be able to use a real open space, open house format for people circulating and getting information, as well as have the opportunity for them to sit down so we can do presentation and part of that, and then have them migrate again. So if you have thoughts about any of those, let us know. But that's where Doreen's looking right now. So
very much like the Department of Transportation does.
Very much, exact same format, I think. Exactly.
Okay. So I'm going to ask some specific questions. Is everybody agreeing that rather than just get yes or no answers on some of this, we'd like to get a little more information, even if it's just nothing more than an open-ended opportunity?
The only thought on that is it takes longer to analyze that information, and it's a little harder to analyze that information because you're not controlling it to some degree.
Well, and we recognized up front this was going to be largely subjective,
and
not
as the budget person,
metrics.
I say it costs more to do that. so we have to be.
See, you always save the important point for last.
So we have to be somewhat aware of the cost.
I'm not worried about the cost.
Bob's not worried about the cost.
As you should be.
No, it has to do, I think, with not overloading it. In other words, making more work out of it than you just have to for the respondents.
Well, then let me ask a couple specifics. Are we doing enough asking about off-street parking? Do we need to ask something about street parking as well?
Yeah, or
You're going to have more street parking?
Well, or how people feel about it. That was one of the questions that's come up. On-street parking versus off-street. What's enough? When is it used? I think there's certain sentiment among some of the commissioners that restrictions on street parking are a bad idea. Not everybody, but some people think that.
can't we just ask about parking?
Just say, do you feel there's enough parking for people who visit downtown? And if you answered no, please describe where you believe more parking should be provided, more off-street parking. At this point, there's no more opportunity for on-street parking, but there is an opportunity for more off-street parking, perhaps. So change the first one and leave the second one pretty much as it is. Does that
Well,
make
we're
sense?
certainly not going to cover in one question or two something that the City Council has taken 3 stabs at in the last 9 years.
Oh, yeah, at least, probably more.
Well, if we include the church, we can have on-street parking there. Both sides.
I
like your persistence, Bo.
I have a question about both 15 and 16.
Yes.
The question is, you refer to all these 1 through 6, and it says, where do you live? And I guess within this, I guess my question to finish that off is, where do you live within the city of Littleton, period? And then you do northwest part of the city, northeast, central, but not downtown, and downtown, or very close to downtown. I have problems with both 3 and 4. But then just moving on, southwest and southeast, I'm assuming you're referring to the entire city.
Right.
I don't know that.
Right.
When I saw that.
Well, and I think we're all going to have different definitions of what's southeast and southwest and northeast and northwest. We found that internally when the 4 of us got together in terms of what that means. We thought, go ahead and let them self-determine what that is rather than setting boundaries for it. It's so complex to set boundaries.
Yeah.
Well,
it's hard to.
The question.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So, I mean,
What would
should we set?
Broadway and Littleton Boulevard?
Well,
there's not much to the east of Broadway.
No, I mean, that's it. In my mind, it's Santa Fe as the east-west divider. Bob says for him, it's Windermere or Gallup, probably. So, yeah, and Ridge Road is his north-south.
Could we make it a little simpler, since some people may already know that? Indicate, because effectively the city is divided into quadrants by virtue of its 4 districts.
True.
So if we were to use District 1/9 northwest. Some people may know the district they're in, others may know the area, so they have a, we're not looking for precise, but it gives them a little bit more of a criteria.
I thought was that almost no one will know the district boundaries they're in. Well, know their
Well,
district.
if you had both, I think he's suggesting.
Both?
But that's what I'm saying. If we did northwest/District 1,
Okay.
northeast/District 2. So it gave people some clue. I think actually a lot of people will know because,
really? Okay.
I mean, the people who vote and are registered to vote and vote for council
What is it we're really looking for with this?
I'm not
I mean, we're just
sure,
looking
but
for general locations, and therefore we want to make it as simple as possible for them to identify.
How
So
many
we don't
people
really
from-
care whether it's council district or.
Well, no,
I'm only proposing the council district just because it may provide one additional clue to somebody.
I think we might be better off giving them points of reference, whether it's Windermere, north-south,
Well,
east and west of Windermere, north-south.
It gets
of
wordy.
Boulevard.
Windermere and Cayley is the four corners of the districts.
Roughly.
There you go. Northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast of Windermere and Cayley.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's easy.
that's easy.
That's easy. Windermere extended, because.
Okay. We want to get Church back in here, Bob?
Huh?
I say we want to talk about Church Street again.
On number 15, or 16 rather, I'm sorry, where it says, how long have you lived there? What's the there again? Again, am I talking city of Littleton, or am I talking down in central downtown?
I think it's in response to 15, because it's with the
That's
describes
why
where
I'm
you live.
asking, because to me, they're not, 15 as it stands is not very clear.
No, it was either Kurt.
I would rather have 16 be how long have you lived in Littleton?
Yes.
As in, instead of the word there.
Yeah.
Because I've lived where I am now 5 years or less, but overall I've lived in Littleton more than 20 years.
That's probably better. Okay, so let's go back and finish up 15. We left Bob kind of struggling with what we were using for our reference. Or do we want to?
I'm trying.
Do we want to take it as Windermere and Cayley? Is that?
And then also use the
How many
districts.
people know?
Yeah, I don't know how many people know where Windermere and Cayley
How
are.
about Windermere and Littleton Boulevard?
But if we
Might
use
not
the
know that either.
districts, yeah, Windermere and Cayley would be the districts. It'd be Cayley extended, Windermere extended is going to be the only problem. But then we could also go into the districts.
Can we use something like zip code or?
Oh, it's all I don't.
No, because the whole 80120, and then you get real,
Littleton Boulevard's a little bit too far north, I
Yeah,
think.
it is.
Yeah.
There's not much north.
not much
of-
north, yeah.
No, I told Dennis that I once divided the city of Boulder into four, and it was really easy there. The way the streets fell, it worked perfectly, but it was very simple. In other words, you got kind of irregular. I'm not sure.
Boulder's easy. 4 districts. There's one libertarian. There's one liberal, or one conservative. There's one independent, and everybody else.
Right.
On your study area map, it appears you do show where Windermere would cross Cayley, if you so described Cayley Street, and then you could put northeast, northwest, all the,
We could put it on there, yeah.
you could put it right on there and go from there.
Yeah, Cayley goes as far as
Cayley is
Santa Fe.
Just south of the lake there, right? Is what we're
The
looking
R
at.
of Prince.
right.
Prince, rather. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes up
Okay.
from the R from
Do you live
Prince.
north or south of Cayley? That would be one test.
Correct.
And then do you live east or west
West
of
of Windermere.
what?
Windermere, or shall we do Prince?
Windermere's fine.
I like Windermere.
Make Windermere?
Yeah, because otherwise Prince goes right through.
That
that.
splits it up by districts.
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
right.
we got both covered. We got the geographic reference for the people who don't know their districts.
Yeah.
And we got the district references for those of us who are right attuned.
What do we do south of Mineral?
That's convenient. Nice map choice, somebody.
I think it's close enough and people can figure it out. I mean, in terms of Windermere and where it is.
Probably so.
Okay.
I mean, especially if we're using the general terms of northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, and then asking people central area.
Okay, so I'm going to back up again till we beat some of these issues to death.
Okay.
He is asking about off-street parking, yes or no enough. Do we want to talk about on-street parking as well?
I think we should change it to just parking.
I would go a step back and says, frankly, the yes or no answers don't do anything to me.
I agree.
Either ask more information or ask it open-ended. For example, number 8, should age be the only criterion used to consider designating a building a historical marker? No, I believe that age should be 90% of the criteria, but it shouldn't be the only criteria. Versus, no, I don't think age should be considered as a criterion whatsoever. And no doesn't tell me much. So,
But I still think compiling all that information when you get down to it is going to be very difficult.
I think if we have a few more.
Can we look at it from one other point of view and use this survey to create a basis for the information that we're going to be looking for at the open house?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ask the greater question, so that when you do have questions with this and you're not sure, it's going to be the first thing out of your mouth at the open house that you want to get clarification from the citizens that are there.
Well, you'll have, of course, questions
That's the idea.
and responses.
Yeah,
Is
good
that
point.
Right. Would it be helpful to say historic structure instead of landmark? Is that a little more generic?
And you know what, I think that question is going to be a little bit confusing to most people. It's like, okay, well, I don't know what a historic landmark is. I mean, what is that? And how does the city of Littleton designate that? I mean, it seems to me that it's kind of vague.
Yeah, we really struggled with that one. If you've got any other ideas how to do that, we'd appreciate it, because we rewrote it multiple times, and we're not.
And Kelly prevailed with landmark.
Kelly prevailed with landmark, but we're open.
Are we really talking about a lot of historic or potential historic landmarks in the central area?
Buildings.
Are we talking about a lot of
Well,
historic
the
structures?
The discussion got to, you can have an historic structure which is totally insignificant unless it's designated. So the thought was, what do we want to keep? You know, we can have historic structures, unless they're designated as historic landmarks with the city, they could go away very easily.
The but that I have with that is dealing with the fact that even though downtown may or may not have a historic designation to it, what keeps it in its Littleton's character of a small town is its earlier structures, if that makes any sense.
But the question is, how many do we keep?
But the point,
Yeah,
well,
do
I
we
don't
keep all of
know
them?
yet. And that's why you have to say if they like it or not, because if obviously, you know, that's another question that's going to have to come up at the open house. What were you thinking about when you were all answered? I mean, that's what the,
Right.
you know, you have, you know, if 80% say they want to keep historic structures, you're still going to need confirmation on what they're talking about, where
Right.
they're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, do you want to have, and if we're now talking about the downtown being all the way to Church or up Prince or whatever, are we going to have it replicated as a historical type of building as it spreads out?
So are we really asking the question about, designating a building as an historic landmark? Or are we talking about the criteria that we would use, Planning Commission or the comp plan would use for preserving or reusing a building of historic significance?
Well, I guess we could do that. The dilemma we have at the moment is the only mechanism we currently have is the historic designation. If it's not designated, like these little houses across the street, somebody could think those are historically significant, that we're tearing down in the next couple of months to build the senior housing. If those are important to people, we need to know that. But if,
that's really a historic planning board function, right? Not us. We're not the ones designating something as an historic structure.
No, but I think we need to know, as in part of our formula, how much redevelopment are we really looking at? I mean, that's the key.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
You have the Molly Brown House downtown, and around the Molly Brown House, you have nothing but high-rises.
Nothing but junk.
And I guess, you know, personally, I like the
as
Molly
junk,
Brown
but yeah.
House much more than I do the high-rises. So I don't know, you know, this is our golden opportunity to either preserve it or turn into a downtown Denver in that area, or something similar to that in the future.
But the question, we're not asking the question about the Molly Brown House. Molly Brown House in Littleton's already been designated. We've got our key structures designated at this point. We're asking the question about the building next to the Molly Brown House, which was a historic apartment building, another historic house, which was old, but didn't have Molly Brown living in it, didn't have its same significance. We're asking the question about the next building. That's what we need to know is, do we keep the next building in addition to what we've already designated? How far do we go? And I don't know how to get to that question.
Well, and again, I think that's the survey is just the teaser or the seed to have it for our later meetings at the open house, because you really, like I say, I look at this as just being nothing more to engage people in thinking about, Littleton. And then when we get to the open house, we're going to hit it a little bit harder to say, okay, what the heck did you mean by this?
Right.
We have 85% saying we don't want to see any historic places down there. Well, what does that mean to you?
Well, right, and this question was, the way it's written now, it says, okay, if we've got something that's 60 years old or 80 years old, do we keep it no matter how significant it is, no matter how architecturally significant it is, no matter how structurally sound it is? Do we try and keep that, or is there something we should be looking at?
Why don't we?
I don't know how else to get. Yeah.
Why don't we ask that question in something similar to how question 6 is phrased?
Okay.
That we give people two alternatives.
Okay.
We want to preserve as many older historic buildings as is possible, versus we should only focus on preserving specific particular, buildings of particular historical importance.
And then I wouldn't.
In the blue area.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call them historic, then I'd call them old.
Right.
Yeah, and
Well,
I'm
that's what
not
we're trying to
coming
get
up,
at.
but I'm saying that if we give people kind of
Right.
for something that is more complex,
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, a yes or no answer there doesn't tell me anything. But two juxtaposed sentences that say people, oh no, I don't want to. People says, yeah, I want to keep every old building. I'm like, well, no, maybe I don't want to keep every old building.
With these questions, though, I think we have to be cognizant that 80% of the people that fill this out will not be at our open house.
Right.
Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe
that's
90%.
true. That's true.
I don't,
But hopefully it'll be representative enough that, we'll
hopefully
get somebody,
representative,
and I don't know why we can't be more obvious and say something like, do we tear down old buildings for redevelopment? I mean.
And that's really what we're getting at. We're not talking about designating historic landmarks.
Should we preserve most old buildings, no matter what their condition, or should we preserve a few historic buildings and most old buildings should be torn down for redevelopment?
Yeah.
Because that can piss people off enough that they will show up. Right?
What we've been drifting towards and talking about our goals and policies and that sort of thing is really more a question of how far do we go to encourage preservation, rehabilitation, reuse, revitalization, or whatever, of structures of historic significance.
Right.
Okay, so that's really what the question we're trying to get people to engage in. So the real question now is, how do we point Bob toward asking that without asking an historic preservation board question?
Well, somebody had the language. I don't know, it was Pablos or Linda. Basically, we want to focus on keeping every old building, or we want to focus on keeping the ones that are architecturally, culturally, or some structurally significant, or something.
I trust that we can come up with the exact wording. I just think that a question that poses two scenarios, that has some kind of evocative, is going to give us a better starting answer, and it will also get people thinking. I mean, I very much agree with Julio. If the point of this is to get people thinking and stirring up and have them come in, but also a lot of the folks who will fill out the surveys won't show up at the open house, that may be the only time we'll get. Right. Let's get something more than a yes or no in a huge question.
Good. Julio?
I have one last thing. It would be good either on the bottom of the page, either put a website address out there and also some telephone numbers so people can contact, because there's nothing more frustrating to me to look at something and all it says is Public Information Corporation. I'm sorry, but that's, I want to know, and it also should have, in my opinion, the city's logo. somewhere on it, so people just don't look at this as trash and throw it away.
Yeah, that came up today.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Can we also put something where it says Public Information Corporation? Can we put something like Littleton Planning Commission, care of Public Information? I mean, if this is something that is sent by us, I want it to look like it's sent by us, not by some kind of, oh geez, another telemarketer, you know.
Or another high-volume retailer who's trying to start something again. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
As a matter of fact, you could. Again, we don't know yet, do we, the mailing requirements?
We don't know. Chris is still checking, I think. Yeah.
I was going to say, I wonder if you could put a city logo above.
Okay, let's try and wrap it up in 5 minutes.
Business reply.
I wonder too. Yeah, good question.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to one of my earlier questions. Is there something about the central area outside of downtown that we want to ask in this, or are we going to wait to invite that kind of comment with the open house?
I think, as Dennis was mentioning, housing might be good to include in here.
I would like to make several of those questions not be downtown Littleton capitalized.
I agree. I
And
think
as
a lot of
such,
them have to be central
leaves it
area.
more open-ended.
I'm interested in finding out what people think about whether they prefer to have the redevelopment or rehabilitation, particularly in that R5 area. Because that R5 area is in danger right now of either going into more high density or being able to be rehabilitated into the same type of housing it is now.
Okay, so there are really two areas in central area outside of downtown. I mean, you not counting the city complex and the county building. The two areas are the area north of downtown, and it's really complicated, the area north of downtown, the area south of downtown toward ACC. So is there one issue that really is of concern dealing with both of those areas, or are there two separate issues? Are they overlapping? Is that what we want to ask about? I mean, in the north, it seems to be how vital it seems to people to preserve that small single-family R5 area. I mean, I know R5 isn't small single-family, but that's what that area is.
I guess I'm back on this thing that we're only going to talk about the downtown. If we're only talking about this 2-block area, I just think that's too limited. I think where we need direction is central area. I see very few of these questions, if any,
and that's what I'm
for
asking.
the downtown.
What else besides downtown do we need to ask? It's the area to the north, and it's the area down toward past Church Street, down toward ACC. So the question is,
which is what Steve's
what question do we want to ask about those two areas?
I think all of these.
That's why I propose that we do not use the
I think
term
so.
downtown Littleton, especially capitalized for a lot of those questions, so that it becomes more open-ended.
I think you're going to dilute the response you get to dealing with the downtown if you talk about the whole area. So my question is, what is it we're concerned about the non-downtown central area?
Well, I agree with Dennis. I think a lot of those questions we're concerned about for many of the different areas.
We're not going to see new housing on Main Street or Alamo. Not much. We're not going to see, most of that's not going to be Main Street Alamo. We're going to see new development in the areas outside of that.
Well, like Electron and all that other stuff.
Electron,
Just what these guys were
Nevada
talking
Place.
about, the migration back and
Absolutely. And that's where the pedestrian connections need to be, where the bicycle connections need to be, where any concern about livability, that's where we're going to be focusing.
So I guess my question is, which of these questions do we think are more properly addressed toward the entire central area instead of downtown Littleton?
Can I, well, just a sidebar to what you're saying, because before that gets answered, because there's going to be a lot of questions we're obviously not going to have answered.
Right.
And a lot of elements. And I guess my comment to that is, know what we have in here, whatever you all come up with, but also make a list of all the things you didn't put in here that you still want to have questions to.
Okay.
Because in reality, you got 16, 17 questions.
Right.
It doesn't cover the world very far.
Right.
And, we have a lot of things, housing, we have economic development, we got, all those other things that are out there, availability, attractiveness of the area, et cetera, all that kind of good stuff. So I think we ought to, the other part of this, you put a list of that didn't make it,
Right.
you know, that still need to be answered. And quit, you know, I think we're beating ourselves up to trying to put as much as we can on 15 spaces or 16 spaces. And the bottom line is, you can't do it that way.
Yeah, I can
There's not
see,
enough room.
I can see easily changing question 6 from downtown Littleton to central area. Talking about the changes, evolution, what's going on, mix of uses and that sort of thing. That certainly seems amenable to the entire central area.
7.
When you say central, however, it's
Nobody's going to know.
It's kind of an abstract a word to most of the residents, I would believe.
Well, that's, yeah, I mean, that's the other way to do
That's
it.
why we have the map.
Exactly why we have
That's why we have the map. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they don't know, if they're not looking at this, then these questions, oh, it's right side up.
And I don't think
mean
people are
much.
going to look at the map. I think they're just going to say downtown Littleton.
That's what I'm hearing
You
from
know,
Kelly,
I mean,
too,
I
and from
won't
Bob.
see the map.
Show that on the map. Look at
But-
maybe on your first paragraphs.
But Kelly was saying the same thing Linda's saying, is that we've got to make this as accessible as possible, which is the confusion if we call this anything other than downtowns. I mean, maybe we call it all downtown.
Let's start with downtown and then.
All of it for downtown. And downtown includes the whole area.
So I will make a proposal,
is Main
because
Street
otherwise
Alamo
we'll
or
be
something.
going and forth. I think that we do not capitalize the word down. I would propose that we don't capitalize the word downtown.
I don't think, I agree, I don't think most people are going to know the distinction.
Okay,
Okay.
and then what we do, where it says, the second says, many people think of downtown Littleton as Main Street. However, the Planning Commission charges study the central area, which includes the area surrounding downtown, and then right there say, look at the map.
Refer to map.
Or, refer to map. And then all the questions, I really don't see any question in here that I find that it applies only to Main Street Alamo.
I don't either, yeah.
And I
really
think
don't.
therefore we lowercase everything and we keep everything referred to as downtown. You know, if that makes it simpler. Instead of having downtown versus central area, if we want to call it all downtown for the purposes of the survey, let's call it that. Let's define it on the map to see the area that we're talking about.
Well, yeah.
We may be assuming a little too complex level of thinking by the people who are responding to this.
Well-
Central area, downtown, capitalized or uncapitalized, as long as you've got a map saying, look, it's this area right here, throw the dart in the center, they're going to respond as you said.
Yes, and I think that if we lowercase it everywhere instead of the upper lower that we've got right now, that we're designating downtown and define that we're talking about one area and it's the area that is out on the map, I would even venture to say that on the study area on the map, we simply have the blue area.
That's what I was saying too. Get rid of the red completely.
We do not make any other distinction
Yeah,
whatsoever.
for simplicity, I think that.
None.
Bob,
Just-
what do you think?
And a heavy blue line.
Your heavy blue line, okay.
Either C.
Heavier than, yeah.
A heavier blue line, that this is a study area. We don't have the historic down, the Main Street. We don't have TIS. We don't have the impact areas. We don't have anything. We decide if we want to call it downtown Littleton because that's easier for everybody, that's fine. Specifying the narrative
Yeah,
that
I
when
think so,
we
too.
say downtown Littleton, we mean
Julio's
the whole
shaking his head.
central area on the map and leave all the questions applying to the entire area.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to get the best response possible, get as many responses as possible. I think that is the simplest. I agree.
That's my proposal. So.
I
It gets
think
rid of all the lines.
We should change all this.
That heavy blue line.
That's right, and it gets Church Street. That's right.
Bob got his way.
Is that currently how you describe the central neighborhood?
Yes, and that's currently how Complan does too, generally.
Generally.
And removing every other designation, just keeping that area.
Okay, anything else we need to go over with Bob?
One of the things I caught myself on is with the questions 1 and 2, because they're open-ended, I tripped on them and I couldn't think of what I wanted to respond to real quick, so I was thinking maybe we could bury those questions a little bit further into the document.
Or at the
because-
end even?
Yeah, because then that'll, to the previous questions will
start
trigger
thinking
you
about it.
thinking
Right.
about various aspects of downtown.
I think that's the kind of editing and reformulation that Bob would have been doing naturally. This was a rather hasty first pass, probably.
Well, it was, but on the other hand, that's kind of how it very often works out.
Yeah. And
But
just,
I was going to say that one term that I kind of advocated is the downtown Littleton vicinity. Something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, this is our central area plan.
Well, I know, but we're dealing with people out there that don't have the foggiest notion what that means.
Well, I think we're going to end up letting them tell us. This is the starting point in the open house.
But if you start saying vicinity, then Pablo's home
I could be
comes into
downtown.
downtown.
Well, I think we just say, if we have a single area that we show on the map, nothing, no sub-areas, no impact areas, no TIS or nothing, just a single area, and we say that's the study area.
Right.
And then it has the text that second says, many people think of downtown Littleton as Main Street. However, the Planning Commission charges to study the central area, which includes the area surrounding downtown.
For purpose of this survey, we will refer to the entire area as downtown.
Yeah, or however we want to do it, and we specify there what we use. We call the downtown Littleton area, or whatever. I don't think here we're trying to become precise with comp plan terms. We're trying to get a sense of what people think.
Agreed.
So we can abandon even the use of the term central area altogether.
I think we need to for now. I agree. Yeah.
But look, we got central area because that's what we've charged with. We've downgraded downtown to a small cap, and it's downtown. I think we start getting more vague with downtown, Littleton vicinity, that sort of thing. We're going back the other direction, starting to get fuzzier. So we've got the central area. That's the only thing on the map. No more lines and keys other than the northeast, north-south, whatever reference points. We've downgraded to downtown Littleton. Let people define that as they think of it. We'll get the responses from them. We've got a mix of yes or no's, some metrics on who they are, where they're from, how long they've been here, and we've got some places for open-ended responses that can stimulate discussion in the open house. Is there anything else that really critical to this that we need to pass on? The headline?
Yes.
I think.
Oh, good. We want to know what you think. Thanks for your input. That one?
Huh?
We want to know what you think.
No, please answer some questions about downtown Littleton.
Oh, this one? Please answer some questions.
I think we can make the exception and leave the capital D. Every other word in the sentence is
Yes,
capitalized.
yeah,
So let's just
Well,
leave that.
I think downtown Littleton is a better drawing card, if you want to know what I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether they think of it as stopping in Alamo or going on to church or all the way down to through ACC.
Yeah.
And just a couple of really quick comments on question 6. I mean, you could just get rid of that whole first sentence and say, which of the following descriptions would you prefer? Because you're leading them on saying that there's been many changes in downtown. And same thing with 7, you can eliminate the first 2 sentences and say, which of the following do you feel would enhance downtown the most?
I'm going to ask for 2 volunteers to work with Bob and Dennis to finalize these questions and get the survey gone.
Volunteer.
Linda?
I can help out via email, but I will not be. I'm leaving town tomorrow and back Saturday.
Okay. Is
so
there somebody who can physically?
Via email I can do, but physically I will not be present.
No interest in volunteering. Okay. Anybody else?
What's this entail? I don't think it's necessary.
Probably one meeting.
Leave it to the
One
staff.
meeting?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay.
On question 4, the only thing that says, when do you mostly go downtown? I would add the word weekend. It says morning, noon, afternoon, evening, or weekend.
We're also going to, for people who work down there, we're going to say all day or something.
Yeah. But I think it's important to kind of figure out weekend versus weekday.
Which is why I'm expecting that somebody needs to sit down with them, go through it all, and get these last
I'll make
thoughts.
some comments.
Okay.
Well, and one of my comments with that is that why do we need
Are we
to
all gonna
ask
say
that
something
question? Because we kind of asked that question in number 3. Can we make the assumptions you use light rail? You're going to be there in the morning and the afternoon. And if you go to restaurants, you're going to be there in the evening or the afternoon.
Because you may be using light rail to go to work, you may be using light rail to go to Rocky.
This isn't going to be a scientific calculation. There's going to be overlap. There are going to be gaps. What we're looking for is some subjective information, as Pablo said, trying to make sure we know what group this information is coming from so we understand perspective, but it's not going to be a scientific calculation.
Well, on question 4, we could add till closing time if you like.
Yeah.
2:15?
Aren't we all going to make some additions and send those?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, if you can, I'll send them in by next Monday.
By Monday?
Yeah.
All right.
So that's a little help from everybody, but I just want to make sure there were at least 2 of us working with staff and Bob to finalize this.
Who's our second one?
Steve?
Oh, Steve, that's right, good.
Okay,
Thank you,
do I
Steve.
hear a motion to adjourn for the evening?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
All right, thank you.